And Kimberly Spears, a policy analyst and political expert currently with UVic's School of Public Administration. Thank you both so much for being here with us. We look forward to hearing more of your insights and reaction as the night plays out.
Great. It's a good thing that we have a big studio, that we can do this. Am I right?
Yes, that's right.
We have our arms up early. Do we have that shot for everybody so they can see?
The fourth shot. No pool noodles needed. We're all good.
Polls closed just, well, 2 minutes ago, and our Ben Nesbitt is live outside the polling station at George J. Elementary in Victoria. Ben, good to see you. How did things go today, and were there any issues at Island polling stations?
Yeah, Joe, no issues to note right now. The doors behind us have just closed. The polls are officially closed. It was a pretty straightforward day, certainly a different day, an election like we've never seen. Across the island, people trickled in and out. There were really no major lines at any point, in and out within 5 minutes. I think Elections BC did expect this. We saw the numbers yesterday. Around 315,000 Islanders had already voted. That's about 80% of the total turnout from 2017. So I think this is what they were hoping for. They wanted the voting more spread out. You saw that with the extra day of advanced polling for safety precautions to have everybody have a safe day at the polls. I don't think they were expecting the mail-in voting that they got, so we'll have to see how that process plays out. But all in all, for the advanced voting and the polls today, considering these circumstances we're in, I'd say it was a pretty successful process.
Now, Ben, of those people that you talked to today, did they feel safe casting their ballots? Did they feel there were adequate COVID precautions in place at the polling stations?
Yeah, Stacey, everybody I talked to said they felt safe. You could clearly see for anyone who went and voted that there were the clear precautions put in place. There were markings on the ground to space people out in the lines there were for both the advanced and today. There were shieldings at the polling stations. There were multiple hand sanitizer areas. So I think Elections BC was well prepared for this. I think everyone who went to the polls would tell you it was a safe, pleasant experience. And I think that's what they wanted. They did the best they could in the short amount of time they had. So all in all, it was a pretty safe and successful turnout for all voters.
All right, Ben Nesbitt reporting live from George J. Elementary. Ben, thank you very much. I'll tell you, I voted today, and it was seamless. I mean, it was very quiet, no problems getting parking. And I don't know if it's because I went early or if it was a polling station, but it was just no problems whatsoever. Walk in, walk out. I was done in about 4 minutes. It actually looked like people were looking for things to do at times. You know, there were a lot of volunteers sitting around waiting for voters to come in, but no problems.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear it. And the polling stations that I drove by today seemed not busy. They seemed pleasantly uneventful, but that's not what I've heard elsewhere in the province. I know certainly in the Kelowna area, I've anecdotally heard that there were more lineups. It was busier than many people expected out there.
You know, and the one, I guess, organization that should get some credit that we haven't talked about, and maybe we will later, but Elections BC. I mean, this is so unusual, and it seems like they've done a really good job with over 1 million votes have been cast before tonight. I mean, it's a challenge, and it seems like things are going really well. But we will stay on that storyline, and maybe there will be problems. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
We will wait and see, and hopefully we'll find out sooner rather than later, but no guarantee of that. Of course, COVID has impacted everything about this election, pretty much why we're in an election in the first place. And it's why tonight maybe the overwhelming question, probably the first time in election history, is not really who's going to win tonight, especially if you believe the polling numbers, but if we'll know who the winner is by the end of tonight. So let's put this to our panelists. Will we declare a winner this evening? Michael?
I think we could. I think there's enough of a voting turnout today, and we've got the advanced voting that was very robust. I mean, we've talked a lot about the mail-in ballots and how huge a number. We went from 6,000 or 7,000 in the previous election up to like 600,000 or 700,000 this time. But the advanced one also set a new record. So British Columbians, you give them new options and opportunities to vote, it seems we're going to take them. So the importance of voting today will be declining in importance, I think, going forward. But I think there'll be enough votes tallied tonight to give us a pretty good sense of the direction.
Do you agree?
I do. Yeah. And I also think that the polls leading up to when the writ was dropped showed the NDPs heavily in favor. People were so supportive of John Horgan and how his government managed the pandemic. So that, like, what a way to start. And so, and those numbers have generally stayed the same throughout the campaign. So, but at the same time, I mean, you know, one fun thing about covering elections, you never know what's going to happen.
Totally. And Stacey, you're right. Like, that's the big question coming in. Will we have a result tonight? But the other big question is the surprises. I mean, if you think back to 2013, you know, for the past 30 days, the pollsters have said the NDP are out in front, and that hasn't really changed. The needle hasn't moved that much. You look at 2013, and everyone said then leader Adrian Dix and the NDP were out in front. There was that newspaper, the front page of the province, I think it said, this man could kick a dog and he'd still win. And what happened? I mean, we were shocked. Everybody was shocked. So I'm curious, do you think that we should, I guess, have some reservations about what the pollsters are telling us heading into tonight?
Well, you know, we really paid attention to the polls in 2013, and this COVID campaign, we didn't hear that much about the polls or them being reported or creating what some people often fear to be a bandwagon effect, where you might get influenced by if you're thinking, well, if they're going to win, well, maybe I will vote, or I won't bother to vote if that's a safe riding. And that really didn't factor into this one, you know. And so the polls also changed their methodologies. They learned a hard lesson in 2013. They made some mistakes in other jurisdictions as well. So the thing is always, don't count on the poll or any single poll, but the trend and the consensus seems to be a strong support for Mr. Horgan's government. However, what we'll see tonight are the advanced votes tend to favor probably the NDPs. So the numbers tonight might be disproportionately favorable to the NDP, and we'll probably hear that from the Liberals later tonight as well.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. A lot of people are saying the pollsters have learned. They've learned. They won't make that mistake again. We'll find out if they have.
Well, and the other thing to remember, too, is the polls and everything else that's happened since that writ was dropped. I mean, for a lot of people who mailed in those ballots, they made their decisions right off the top. They got those mail-in ballots, they fired those things off, and then it was kind of a moot point for them. So everything that's happened since they mailed that ballot really doesn't matter and won't influence those votes, of course.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the interesting things about this campaign. It really started, I think, in 2017, when political parties would drop a promise, at least one promise per day, and release their platform in that last week. And because there's been so many advanced polls, and because the mail-in ballot cutoff date was so soon, that parties had to release their platforms earlier. So I was interested, you know, in the last week or so, well, what are they going to talk about? Are they just going to keep talking about the promises they made, and or they're going to be new promises? And there, you know, were a couple of those.
Well, they talked about whether we should be doing this at all, it seemed, for the whole 30 days, right? That kept on coming up. As we wait for the results to come in, let's take a look now at what's on the line tonight. 87 ridings, each riding gets a seat. You know how this works. 44, that's a number you will hear a lot of tonight. That's how many seats are needed for a majority. You're looking at the seat count at dissolution. The NDP held 41 seats. You see them on top. The Liberals also had 41 seats. The BC Greens with their 2 seats, you see them in the center there. They're fighting to hold on to those seats tonight. And then there were 2 seats held by independents and that 1 vacant seat left by Andrew Weaver in Oak Bay, Gordon Head.
All right, speaking of seats, there are 14 of them up for grabs on Vancouver Island. Last time around, 10 of those went to the NDP. So let's take a look at our ridings, beginning in the North Island. We have that riding is up for grabs seemingly for the first time in a long time. Of course, NDP, well, long-standing NDP candidate Claire Trevena held that seat for 15 years, the transportation minister in the John Horgan government. She's very popular and won easily by 14.5% in 2017. Michelle Babcock taking over the reins there for the NDP. She's a Campbell River councillor. She won 65% of the votes in 2018 to win that council seat there. Up against the Liberals' Norm Facey. He's a forestry executive. And a name you may well recognize for the Green Party there, Alexandra Morton. She's a well-known biologist and anti-fish farm activist. And of course, forestry, fish farming, one of the 2 of the big issues up there on the North Island. If we move a little bit south now, we will head to the very interesting riding of Courtney-Comox. Of course, in 2017, this one was what everybody in the province, what everybody across the country was watching, waiting to see how this would play out. On election night, just 9 votes gave Ronna Ray Leonard the win for the NDP. Our own Dean Stoltz is in the Courtney-Comox riding tonight, and he gives us a preview of what we can expect on the evening. Dean?
Well, Stacey, the dramatics of election night in 2017 in this riding are pretty well known, and it took another 15 days after that to do a recount and count absentee ballots before NDP candidate Ronna Ray Leonard was eventually declared the winner by a meager 189 votes out of 29,000 ballots cast. So why the history lesson tonight? Well, because many people here, including the incumbent Ronna Ray Leonard and Liberal candidate Brendan Day, who is running for the first time, believe the very same thing could happen all over again tonight. In fact, this time around, because there are so many mail-in ballots in this election that won't even be counted until about November 3rd, few people with both parties here are expecting a final result tonight. Now, history lesson number 2, and this may or may not be a factor tonight, but in 2017, the BC Conservative Party ran a candidate here in Courtney-Comox who got 2,200 votes. This election, there is no Conservative candidate, so where do those votes go? Do those people vote Liberal? Do they vote Green? Do they vote NDP? That's a lot of votes up for grabs if, in fact, those people voted at all. Stacey?
Thank you, Dean Stoltz. In the Courtney-Comox riding tonight, let's have a look at Mid-Island Pacific Rim. Scott Fraser has represented this riding since 2005, or this area, I should say. The riding changed. These are the folks on the ballot. You see Josie Osborne there, the mayor of Tofino, the popular mayor of Tofino. Last election, she won with a resounding 86% of the vote. That was in 2018. Helen Poon is running for the Liberals. She made headlines recently saying that if she was elected tonight, she would donate all $100,000+ of her salary to charity. And then for the Greens, Evan Jolicoeur, a first-time politician. He's worked behind the scenes in previous federal and provincial campaigns, but he is running for the Greens, hoping to bring home a seat for them tonight. And we'll take a look at Parksville-Qualicum. The Liberals hoping to hold on to their seat. You see Michelle Stilwell. If she wins tonight, this will be her third term as the MLA for Parksville-Qualicum. Adam Walker is running for the NDP. He's a Qualicum Beach town councillor, and Rob Lyon is running for the Greens. We're going to get more on this race. Kendall Hansen is standing by outside Michelle Stilwell's, I guess, viewing party tonight at the Qualicum Beach Legion. Kendall, over to you.
Well, Joe, I'm outside the Legion in Qualicum Beach, where Liberal candidate Michelle Stilwell and a number of her supporters are hoping to celebrate the third time she's won in the Parksville-Qualicum riding. The last 2 elections, she won this seat rather handily. In the last election, she secured 45% of the vote. Now, the Green and NDP candidates secured the other 55% quite evenly, so it would take quite a dramatic shift for Michelle not to win tonight. There are also 2 extra candidates in this election. There's an independent as well as a conservative candidate. And so, as most political pundits will tell you, the more candidates there are, the more likely it is that the incumbent is going to win. Joe, we'll pass it back to you.
All right, that's Kendall Hansen tonight reporting from Parksville-Qualicum. Now, of course, this electoral district is among the oldest in the country, so healthcare top of mind, especially during this pandemic. And so I put this to our panelists. Will healthcare benefit one party or the other? How have the Liberals and the NDP fared in the healthcare campaign? Kim?
Healthcare was, and not surprisingly, a big issue, and both with the NDPs and the Liberals, it was one of their pillars, and and related also fighting the pandemic, and it was also of import to the Green Party as well. But in terms of who won the healthcare nugget, in terms of perhaps what was more appealing, I think in dealing with the pandemic, that's been top of mind, but other health issues are as well, and that's where I think Horgan hit perhaps a home run when his team came out with that 10-year cancer plan, just given how prolific cancer is in so many people's families. And then, of course, if I can say somebody, the Horgan government promised a hospital. I remember just living in Alberta after Lougheed got elected. He ended up building hospitals, I think, in every district, hoping to get run again. So I always expect to see somebody's building a hospital in a campaign.
It's so front of mind right now, just because we're in a pandemic. It seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're right. I mean, the NDP came in with that relationship with Dr. Bonnie Henry. And and I mean, her popularity is sky high, right? Yeah. So it seems like you're right. The NDP wanted to keep that ball rolling. Let's start promising, you know, urgent and primary care. Let's build some new long-term care centers. How much did we hear about long-term care centers? I mean, that was, it seemed like there was an entire week dedicated to that. But I think that their mindset was, look, people are talking about health and safety right now, and that's where we need to go.
What's interesting, you're right. I mean, during the last 6 months, John Horgan made a very strategic decision. Let Dr. Henry be the face of the health response in this province. Paid off handsomely, I think, for him. And then during the campaign, he ran as an incumbent. And he promised things, and people believed him. He wasn't just running as an opposition or as a historical NDP candidate. This was the man who was the premier. So when he announced a new hospital here, new facilities there, another $1 billion here, 4,000 workers here, 7,000 there, people just accept him. And Dr. Andrew Wilkinson had to continually remind people that he was a physician.
Hold on a second.
I know what
He's a doctor? That's a joke.
You've not heard that?
That's a joke.
So it really played, that summed up a lot of this campaign, that John Horgan, as the incumbent premier, made great advantage of that in being able to make announcements on arguably the top of mind issue. Almost every Canadian election is around healthcare. And in COVID, you know, supremo issue. And he's got to look back and think he had a pretty easy go of it on the healthcare file over the last 30-odd days.
There are some who would say that John Horgan's successful management of this COVID-19 is because the Green Party and the Liberals agreed not to make this a political issue. Okay, we're just going to sit back. We're not going to criticize. We're going to go along with it. It's going to be a team effort. We're all going to join together to fight this pandemic together. And so there is, I want to talk to you both a bit about this a little bit later, and the idea of betrayal. And is this what has happened with this snap election? But for now, talking about healthcare, and is John Horgan's success enough to unseat the Liberal Michelle Stilwell in this riding?
I don't think so. I think this is, she bucked the trend last time. I think Michelle Stilwell is well-known. She's one of those candidates that people will vote for the person as much as for the party label or for the leader. And, you know, the campaign did not go all that well for the Liberals provincially. I think that's fair to say. But you have a candidate here who is well-known and strong and has a very active and loyal constituency association that got her people out. So.
You know, and she has that label. I mean, 2 elections ago, she has that label, star candidate, something that we don't hear of very much, at least not in this election. All right, folks, exciting news here. We have some results coming in, Stacey.
Yes, we do. It looks like there are some polls reporting here from the Mid-Island Pacific, 2 polls of 100, but it still looks pretty encouraging so far for Josie Osborne. And I suppose this is not much of a surprise heading in. Josie Osborne, our very, very popular mayor for Tofino. She won with, I think, 83 or 86% in the last municipal election. So with now 3 polls reporting of 100, it looks like Josie Osborne sitting there at 65% of the popular vote. All right, let's take a look at Nanaimo now. And Nanaimo is a riding that's had a bit of a political shuffle here. Of course, 2017 MLA Leonard Krogh is now Nanaimo's mayor. MP Sheila Malcolmson is now MLA. The Greens' Paul Manley in Ottawa, of course. Let's go to Sky Ryan now, who will tee things up in this riding for us tonight. Sky?
Guys, I'll be watching the Nanaimo riding where Sheila Malcolmson is trying to fend off the BC Liberals and the Greens after winning this seat in a by-election last year by just 2,500 votes. Interesting fact here is that the campaign manager for the NDP tells me 6,000 mail-in ballots went out in this riding alone. So whether we will have the results that could be very close by tonight is very unclear at this point. So to give us some insight is someone that you would be able to call an expert on the Nanaimo riding. 6-time Nanaimo MLA and now Nanaimo Mayor Leonard Krogh will join us, and we'll have that as this CHEK News coverage continues. Back to you.
Thank you, Sky. Let's take a look at Nanaimo North Cowichan here. Doug Routley, the incumbent for the NDP, he has been the MLA for, well, this area. He was the former Cowichan Ladysmith MLA, but since 2005, he's well known in the community. He's up against Liberals' Duck Patterson. Many people in the Ladysmith area will know Duck Patterson. He's a town councillor. He's been a councillor for 32 years. That name, Duck, by the way, his given name is Donald, which presumably gave way to the nickname Duck, which stuck. And for the Greens, Chris Eustache. He is also a former town councillor, not on the island. The Upside guys will like this. He was a former town councillor in Estevan, Saskatchewan. So those are the three names on the Nanaimo North Cowichan ballot. And if we take a look at the Cowichan Valley, a lot of eyes on this riding tonight. Sonia Furstenau, you see her there, the leader of the Greens, one of two seats the Greens are trying to hold on to tonight. She's up against, from the NDP, North Cowichan councillor Rob Douglas, and from the Liberals, Tanya Call. Tanya is a first-time candidate running for public office. We're going to check in now with April Lawrence. April is covering the only leader party here on the island tonight. That's the Greens. They're at the Delta Hotel. And April's also one of the few people inside tonight, which is a win because the temperatures dropped. How are you, April? How are things going at the, I guess, the Green headquarters tonight?
Well, yes, it is warm here, Joe. Yes, it is, but it is unlike anything I've ever seen. We've all covered a lot of elections. This one is bizarre. I'm in the room here. There's maybe about 20 people, most of them reporters, a few party officials. I did just see Saanich North and the Islands incumbent Adam Olsen walk in the room. Very quietly, he's gone to the back with a few of senior party officials from the Green Party. Leader Sonia Furstenau is somewhere in the hotel. She's in a room here. She's going to watch the results come in from there, and we'll be speaking a little later on. So what are they hoping for? As you mentioned, obviously at minimum holding on to those two seats, Furstenau and Olsen seats. That would give them official party status. Of course, they're hoping to expand on that. They'd like to see Oak Bay Gordon Head stay green and add outside of the island, maybe West Vancouver Sea to Sky. But of course, there's the chance that the party might not fare well. They didn't have a lot of time to prepare for this election. Could they be wiped out completely? We're going to have to wait to find out. I did hear from a party official that they say the chances that we're actually going to have the final results and know how the party ended up tonight, about a 50-50 chance. So we'll be here and we'll walk you through it as the night continues. Back to you guys.
All right, April. Thanks very much for
Thanks,
that.
April.
And I think we do have some more results to pass along in this early stage here. Let's take a look at the North Island results. And we have single poll reporting of 118. And we are hopeful that we'll be getting some fast results in tonight, perhaps faster than normal, given that there are perhaps fewer people going to the polling stations today than in years past. Here, this is actually Saanich North and the Islands. I was thinking it was North Island, but there's Adam Olsen right there. He is the incumbent, of course. He's got 60% of the vote right now. Stephen Roberts there with 40% of the vote. And this has been a tough one. This was a tight one back in 2013. Gary Holman for the NDP was in there, but the top three were separated by a measly 400 votes. So this one could be a tight race again. Stephen Roberts, a strong candidate. He's been here before. And Zed King, of course, the longtime, very popular councillor in the region, Central Saanich councillor since 2002. So we'll be watching this one very, very closely with one of 118 polls reporting. And I think, Joe, you have some North Island results next.
Yeah, let's jump to the other end of the island and look at some results. 4 polls reporting here, and it looks like the Greens off to a strong start. Alexandra Morton with 17 votes. Norm Facey, the Liberal candidate, not far behind. And then you see Michelle Babchuk there with 11 votes. Again, folks, this is very early. Things can change. They usually do. But these are the results from the North Island.
All right, we have some more results for you from the Mid-Island. We have... Once again, we have 3 of 100 polls reporting here from the Mid-Island, 65% for Josie Osborne. And it looks like the Green Party candidate there is coming in number 2. And Helen Poon, it looks like she may not be able to donate all that money to charity. Of course, as you mentioned earlier, Joe, she made headlines by offering to donate her salary to charity. She is independently wealthy and says she doesn't need the money. So she's sitting there at 11% of the vote so far, with 3 of 100 polls reporting.
Let's bring Kim and Michael back in here now. We saw April down at Green headquarters tonight. Safe to say the Greens are fighting for their political life, Michael?
Well, there's been no bones made by the Premier and certainly the NDP and perhaps even the Liberals that they would like to go back to an older, more traditional two-party approach to the legislature and the politics in this province. But we'll see what the voters have to say about that. But certainly, you know, that sense of betrayal you mentioned earlier, Stacey, you know, Sonia Furstenau, leader, within hours or days, the call gets made and the agreement gets broken. So they're very much on their back heels fighting for their political lives.
And Kim, you actually live in the Cowichan Valley, and it sure seems like both the NDP and Liberals have worked really, really hard to try and hammer down that Green Party. I mean, federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was here, and he went to 2 ridings. He went to Adam Olson's, and he went to Sonia Furstenau's. So what's your take on it, and do you think they'll survive that attack?
I think the Greens will survive that attack, and I'm thinking as well, same with North Saanich and the Gulf Islands. I think with First to Know, I think that 8 days on the job, they struggled, and you can see that they didn't have a full slate of candidates. They were the last ones out with their platform. So I think one thing that perhaps in a minority government situation, I guess I'm always surprised that parties aren't a little bit more prepared, even though they are going through some changes. So I do think she will hold that seat, though. I think a lot of people want to see that green conscious in the legislature. But if I can just say, too, I think building on what Michael said, I think it's been a struggle for voters to figure out where the Green Party stands and how they compare to the NDPs and the Liberals as both those parties move to the center. Now it's like the Greens seem to be the progressive voice in BC and perhaps not the NDPs.
We haven't even got into Victoria Swan Lake yet to give a preview, but we've got results coming in, so let's not wait. Let's bring it up. One poll reporting, and Rob Fleming there. He has been the MLA in that riding since 2005. Basically, his entire career has been in politics. Greater Victoria residents will know him well. He's off to a strong start, 36 votes, and the Greens, I know it's early, but so far they've had a strong showing in a couple of ridings, Stacey.
Absolutely, and we'll definitely keep a look at them and the Green Party and how they fare, and looking to maybe make some ground in other ridings other than just those 2 we keep talking about, which is North Saanich and Cowichan Valley. So let's carry on now with our look at some of the ridings here that we haven't talked about yet. Taking a look at some Saanich South ridings, and this one has been NDP since 1991, with the exception of 2001. Lana Popham there holding the seat since 2009. Agriculture Minister under John Horgan. Here, Rishi Sharma of the Liberals is there, and you can see right now he's at 27% of the vote. An unsettling event happened while he was campaigning there. The victim of some racist comments there for Rishi, but he's in there, solid second place for now. And then Kate O'Connor, here she is, the 18-year-old who turned 18 during this campaign, the youngest person. She would be the youngest MLA ever elected if she managed to pull things off there. But you can see there with one poll reporting, it looks like Lana Popham has a solid lead there.
All right, let's jump back up to Parksville, Qualicum. You saw Kendall there earlier tonight. We'll check back in with him in a bit, but we've got some results coming in. And look at that, 9 polls reporting, and it's the Greens. Rob Lyon out to a strong start. It's still very close. Michelle Stillwell just 2 votes behind. And Adam Walker, it is very tight in the early going here. All 3 of them vying for that top spot. But we will keep you updated on how that fight goes.
All right, so let's take a look at Esquimalt-Metchosin now, and here we have some results. One poll reporting here for Mitzi Dean. She is the incumbent. She's the parliamentary secretary for gender equity. She has been in this past government. She's up against Andy McKinnon, who is a Metchosin councillor. He's in there with 26% of the vote, and RJ Cinco at 10%. Again, Mitzi Dean won fairly easily last year in her first go at it. She got 46.3% of the vote in 2017. All right, let's take a look at Langford-Esquimalt now, or sorry, Langford-Juan-de-Fuca now. And if there is any such thing as a sure thing in this election, I would say it would be right here. John Horgan, you may have heard of him. In passing, this is his riding, and there's not much doubt that he will take it again. He's held this district that has changed boundaries somewhat in the last number of years. 52.8% of the vote in 2017. He has been leader of the party since 2014. Up against Kelly Darwin for the Liberals. It's her first crack at campaigning here. She's VP of the Chamber of Commerce on the West Shore, and Gord Baird of the Green Party. He and his wife Anne, both Highland councillors. All right, so we will be following the NDP campaign. Of course, we've heard that John Horgan is at the Pinnacle Hotel Harbourfront in Vancouver tonight, but we're looking forward to hearing from a number of South Island NDP candidates this evening. Our Jasmine Balla is in downtown Victoria, where we might find some of those NDP candidates tonight. Jasmine.
Yeah, Stacey, that's right. We'll take a look first at kind of the Victoria Beacon Hill riding, because that's kind of where we are right now. It's going to be a bit of an interesting race. You know, it's interesting because this was actually Carol James's seat for 15 years, but now she's not running again after being diagnosed with Parkinson's disease earlier this year. So this riding is up for a new MLA. We've got 4 candidates in the running: Grace Lohr for the NDP, Karen Bill for the Liberals, the Green Party's Jen Nielsen, and Jordan Reichard running independently. Now, the NDP have held this riding since 1991, except for one term in 2001 that was won by the BC Liberals. The NDP's Carol James won back the riding in 2005, but now that she's out of the race, the Greens and the Liberals will be hoping to scoop the seat up. It'll be interesting to see how this race kind of unfolds, and we know we'll be seeing a few others kind of going in and out of the building. Rob Fleming being one of them. Grace Lohr might show up. Lana Popham might also be here as well.
All right, Jasmine, thank you very much. Stay warm. Jasmine Balla reporting live tonight, not far from where we are. A few of the South Island candidates have decided that they will get together at some point tonight. Most of them are probably watching at home, and then at some point they'll make the decision to head down to where Jasmine is, and we are expecting to hear from some of them as they go in. Let's take a look at Victoria Beacon Hill now. We're looking at it right now. There are some early results. 4 polls reporting Grace Lohr. She is trying to take that seat from her colleague, outgoing, well, she's been a political juggernaut on the South Island for a long time, Carol James. She is not running. Jasmine explained why. And Jen Nielsen not far behind. Again, we're seeing the Greens, if they're not leading, they're close behind in some of these early island ridings here. Jen Nielsen, a lot of Nielsen signs in Victoria Beacon Hill. I think, you know, you said earlier, Stacey, we talk so much about those 2 Green ridings that they hold seats to. This was one that I think, Michael, that they were hoping that they might be able to poach.
Yep, yeah, you're right. I'm just going to echo what you just said, Joe. We've looked up and down the island, and a lot of these ridings, the Greens are showing a strong early second place showing, and it seems to be at the expense of Liberal votes. And even though the last few polls had the Green at around 17 or 16% provincially, I think here on the island they're polling much higher than that. So I think this has got to be encouraging news for Sonia Furstenau, who I think we see with Adam Olsen.
The Greens right now are leading in Powell River, Sunshine Coast, and the North Island, and you can see it on the faces of Adam Olsen and Sonia Furstenau. This is a live shot, I believe, of them at their hotel, the Delta, in downtown Victoria, well, in Vic West, and well, I wonder what she's looking at there. Was that excitement or surprise?
I think they're daring to dream.
They're daring to dream.
I think North Island was vulnerable for the NDP, quite honestly, through this campaign, and this could be one where we might be surprised that there's a steal here tonight.
And again, on name recognition alone, a lot of folks know Alexandra Morton for her work, and a lot of people feel very strongly against the open pen, open water fish farms up there. In the North Island, while we're looking at it, let's talk about forestry. And we can't forget about the crippling 8-month-long Western Forest Products strike that really impacted the North Island. Is there a hit that the NDP is going to take in that riding, do you think, Kim, based on that strike and how the provincial government dealt with it?
I think so, and I always find it really interesting watching the results of North Island, because I just find it really represents that division I find in provincial politics about, you know, economics versus the climate, and I really find that debate is the crux of the issue in this riding. So I think it's really telling. So I find it so interesting that the Greens are leading, and you know, that idea perhaps of a green recovery, a just recovery, has really resonated with voters here on the island. You know, as Michael pointed out, and Joe as well, just, you know, a strong second place showing and leads in some of the ridings already.
How much of this, what we're seeing early here, is frustration? Because I think, you know, we've spoken to a lot of people who were frustrated that we're even having an election. They didn't want to vote Liberal because, well, for various reasons, and as a result, they decided to vote Green. I'm sure they agree with some of the policies, but I think also they just couldn't bring themselves to vote for the other parties. Do you think we're seeing some of that?
Well, we talked about the polls. If the polls get it wrong tonight, it'll be part of this quiet undercurrent that people didn't admit to in pollsters, or maybe even to their neighbors publicly, but quietly and privately, they're parking their votes where Sonia was hoping they would, which is with the Green Party. And you could see that delight. I think that was, her hands were in the air for a happy.
It could have gone either way. It really could have.
Well, that sort of sums up the election so far for where the Greens could be. But again, I think Vancouver Island is a different political culture than certainly the mainland or the interior of the north. If they're going to get a breakthrough, it'll be here on the island. So these are early, encouraging. You know, if this was a typical election, we'd be going to a hall where there'd be a lot of Green people pretty excited right now. They'd be pretty pumped, feeding off each other's excitement. So this is as good as it gets, watching Adam Olsen and Sonia Furstenau quietly alone watching the screens, but obviously feeding off that excitement.
Polls have been closed for 36 minutes now. And oh, look at this. This is a shot we haven't seen. This is that they're watching on a laptop. Yeah, there you go.
They're Zooming with all their Green
is that
Party
what they're
buddies
doing?
there. I
Is that
think
a
they're on a Zoom call.
Yeah, you're right. And the game Labyrinth is propping up the computer. That is
I love that game.
I
That's
do
such a good
too.
game. We have that in our house. All right, we need to head to Victoria Beacon Hill and get one look at what's happening there in that riding. And there we go. There's Grace Lohr and Jen Nielsen. We've looked at this one already. Karen Bill has given it a shot a few times in the past unsuccessfully. And there's Jordan Reichert running as an independent with 1% of the vote. Taking a look now at Victoria Swan Lake. This is one that Rod Fleming has done very well in. Nearly a third of this riding, interestingly, has mailed in their ballots. So they made up their minds well in advance of this evening. Education Minister Rob Fleming, of course, he won by more than 53% of the vote in 2017, and we'll head back to that one. Meantime, Joe, we've got to talk about Oak Bay Gordon Head, and this is one that we're looking forward to very, very much tonight.
There you go. All the folks watching in Oak Bay Gordon Head were saying, when are you going to get to this riding?
Here we are.
There you go, folks. Two polls reporting right now, and Murray Rankin, the former Victoria MP for 7 years, is off to a strong start. But again, the Greens, Nicole Duncan right behind him there. And Roxanne Helm, the lawyer, is still in the hunt as well. All right, Mary Griffin has been keeping close watch on what's playing out in Oak Bay Gordon Head. She's out braving the elements tonight. Mary, how are you? And we've seen some early results. What are you keeping an eye on?
Well, Joe, we're here in the heart of Oak Bay, actually, on Oak Bay Avenue, and there's a few hardy souls bucking the weather over my left shoulder here, just out in one of the restaurants. And this is a riding that has bucked political trends. It is one of the battlefields in British Columbia, with registered voters here voting in the greatest variety of candidates from political parties in any riding across the province, going back to 1979 when they voted social credit, bringing in Brian Smith, who became BC's Attorney General. Then in 1986, the NDP won. Elizabeth Cull went on to become BC's Finance Minister. 1991, Ida Chong, first of 4 elections. She made history as the island's first Chinese-Canadian MLA. And then, of course, again in 2013, Andrew Weaver becoming the first BC Green Party member elected to the legislature, and then he was brought in again in 2017. And this is, you know, they're all battling hard throughout this entire election, and most of the candidates who go on to win go on to cabinet positions or are party members. So it really is a battleground, Joe.
I know you've been in contact with some of the candidates in this riding. What are they telling you? Are they confident tonight? Are they waiting to see? We're hearing this, we're going to wait and see approach from a lot of the parties. They don't want to say anything until all the results come in. What are you hearing from the candidates in this Oak Bay Gordon Head riding?
Well, you know, you talk to a candidate and you get a very optimistic message. It's made more difficult this time, of course, because they're not doing door-to-door campaigning, and that's where you get a lot of information from the voters. But I've seen them out on the avenue campaigning, talking to different people, and they all feel optimistic. You know, it's a really tough one to call. Andrew Weaver won with 52% of the vote in 2017, but the year before it, the election before that in 2017, it was a bit of a battle, and it's always a battle. So they go in full helm, fighting as hard as they can. And you know, this is one of those ridings that is really too close to call most election, Joe.
All right, Mary, thanks very much. That's Mary Griffin in the heart of Oak Bay tonight, and we will be checking back in with you, Mary, again. Now, before we take a quick run back down, up and down the island looking at the latest results, I want to ask our panelists here about the mail-in ballots. Once again, do the mail-ins favor one party over another? We're looking at some really early Green success here. I mean, is this something that we're going to see lots of NDP votes in those mail-in ballots? Kim, let's go with you first.
Yeah, the polls have, and research has shown that the mail-in ballots will be tending to favor the incumbents. And interesting as well, the ridings with the highest number of mail-in ballots just happens to be Oak Bay. I think they're number 2, Oak Bay and Gordon Head, and the other one is Victoria Beacon Hill. So I think this might be a bit of a nail biter where, yeah, it's going to be down to the cuticles because we might be waiting 3 or 4 weeks for the results of this one. So yeah, I'm surprised again that it was this close. And Joe, just going back to your earlier point, I think we might be seeing a bit of a backlash in terms of Horgan calling that election. I was chatting, I try to get out of my little political nerd bubble up in the university, and I was chatting with my neighbors, and some of them were really upset that the NDPs called the election. And they said that usually they vote with reason, but this time it's reason and passion, and that they really didn't like the political opportunism. And so I'm thinking, you know, we know that there's a lot of skepticism about politics and politicians. So I think the Greens and the Liberals did a fantastic job in attacking Horgan on that point, right off the bat.
Let's get some more results in here for the folks at home. Let's. I think we'll start at the north end of the island if we have it, and we'll work our way down. We can continue this discussion too as we do this, but we'll pull up the latest numbers for you. Here's the North Island, and well, a bit of a change there. Alexandra Morton was in the lead in the early going here, but it looks like Michelle Babchuk has. She's sitting at 52 votes, so my math isn't very good. Stace, what is that, 9 votes ahead right now? I think I got that right.
I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
You're pretty good. Awesome. All right, taking a look as we carry on down the island, here's Courtney-Comox, and we're looking at Runaway Leonard with a lead right now of 49%, 184 votes. But keep in mind, this is, again, very early going. 5 of 106 polls reporting in Courtney-Comox, and I'm sure Runaway would like a much, she'd like a much easier election this time around than she had in 2017. All right, carrying on as we go to Mid-Island Pacific Rim, we're looking at Josie Osborne. There is 61% of the vote. She looks to have things well in hand. 22 polls reporting.
Does this surprise you? I mean, this is a commanding lead. 22 polls. The polls are coming in, or the votes are coming in faster than elsewhere right now. But it looks like we've got a runaway winner here.
That's historic NDP territory,
Yeah.
old CCF, and that goes deep roots in the Mid-Island area. So, and this is a good example of, you had a popular incumbent, and then you got a terrific candidate in Josie Osborne to replace Scott Fraser. So strong candidate in a strong area. This is one that doesn't surprise me.
We should draw people's attention to the bottom left of your screen. That's elected and leading, I believe, and we've got the NDP out to 48 seats right now. Leading in, polls and votes are still coming in, but this count on the bottom left will continue to change throughout the night. But right now, the NDP off to a strong start.
Absolutely. And as we take a look at Parksville-Qualicum here, we see that the NDP's Adam Walker with 14 polls reporting. He's got a lead over Rob Lyon in second place. Michelle Stillwell at this point, surprisingly, in third spot for the Liberals. And boy, oh boy, if Michelle Stillwell loses that seat in Parksville-Qualicum, that signals big, big trouble, I think, for the BC Liberals. Would you agree, Michael?
Absolutely, because I was thinking this would be the one that they would hold. But you're right, there's some tipping points. And there's something around Metro Vancouver where we'll see maybe later this evening that if we see a few of these 2 or 3 term popular local Liberal MLAs go down, that really suggests to me we're going to see the Liberals end up tonight or in a few weeks at around the low 30 seats, and Mr. Horgan hitting around 50 or the low 50s, like a major majority victory. So early days yet, Stacey, but this is really interesting. This is a flashpoint to watch.
Yeah, sure is. Okay, let's carry on now and take a look at Nanaimo. We've got Sheila Malcolmson, the incumbent there, currently leading with 54% of the vote, ahead of Liberals Kathleen Jones and Lisa Versible there at 23%. Nanaimo South now, or Nanaimo South, well, it would be south of Nanaimo and North Cowichan. We've got Doug Routley, he is at 56%, 115. And boy, oh boy, it's not even 8:45 yet, and we can already declare one riding, one electoral district for you, and that is coming on the Mid-Island Let's see if we have that graphic there. And we just talked about it, a runaway win, and there we go, that red check mark. Josie Osborne will no longer be Tofino's mayor. Bring on the by-election out on the West Coast. Josie Osborne has won that riding for the NDP. As we talked about just moments ago, guys, no big surprise. This is an NDP stronghold, and Josie Osborne, very well known, very popular for her. So that's a good start for the NDP.
Yeah.
I think a future minister too. Like
Well, her popularity. I mean, it's hard. You'd be hard pressed to find a politician on the island that is so popular. I mean, Tofino is going to be celebrating tonight this win. She is so well liked in that community, and I think it was just a matter of time. When she was elected in 2013, you knew that she was going on to bigger and better things eventually.
Although I think a few tears will be shed as well, because she won't be spending nearly as much time in Tofino. She'll be more in Victoria. So let's go to the Cowichan Valley now and check in and see what's happening there. And this is one we're watching. 51% of the vote right now for Green Party leader Sonia Furstenau. There's Rob Douglas for the NDP. He's in there at 33%. So it looks like Sonia Furstenau is well on her way to success there. We're going to check in now, back in at Green Party headquarters, as they are. It's not anything like we've seen from big election day parties in the past, but our April Lawrence is indeed there at Green Party headquarters. April, what have you got? What's going on?
We are here with Dr. Lisa Gunderson, Green Party official. We're wearing our masks because we couldn't keep our 6 feet apart. Very different night here. The results are starting to roll in, Dr. Gunderson. Realistically, what will you be satisfied with seeing for the BC Greens this election?
I think tonight, if we're able to hold on to Adam Olson's riding and Sonia Furstenau's riding, that'd be wonderful. If we can pick up a riding in, say, West Van, that would be excellent as well. I think we'd be satisfied with that.
What was the biggest challenge for the party? Obviously, not only having a leader in place a week before this election was called. How big of a challenge has that proven for the Greens?
It was a bit of a challenge, right? Sonia had just come off of 9 months of campaigning to be leader. She had just a week, but it's amazing what she was able to pull off. We were able to get 74 people into this election, and if you notice, she did brilliantly at the debates. She has just been a solid leader. So happy to have her. So, but again, we did have the problem with the fact that it was called so quickly, that snap election, but I think we did great.
What do you think, I mean, at the end of the night, do you feel like we're going to know what the outcome is? Green Party and NDP supporters, we've heard more likely to use mail-in ballots, perhaps, than, say, Liberal voters. What are you expecting to see as far as final results and knowing where each riding stands by the end of tonight?
I think for maybe one of our ridings, we may be looking at a bit of a longer night, and I think that's going to be true for quite a few of the ridings for different parties tonight. I hope we know what's going to happen at midnight tonight, but if not, we're probably looking at a week or two to see the results, possibly. Yeah.
It's definitely a different night, definitely a different election. We've been talking all night about how different this feels. I mean, how different does it feel for you and for those in the party?
Oh, it feels so different. I was here 3 years ago. There were so many people. We weren't in masks. The energy was different, you know, but I am very confident tonight. I am thinking it's going to go very well. Again, Sonia has been brilliant over the past few weeks, so fingers are crossed.
Are we still talking about the NDP? I know there was some bitter feelings because they called the election so shortly after Sonia was elected leader, and there was talk that maybe they did that in an attempt to wipe out the Green Party and to take back those seats. What is the feeling about that now?
I think, and it's not just us, I think a lot of people feel that a snap election wasn't appropriate during this time of a pandemic. To call that when so many other things are going on in our province, when things were going well, doesn't really make a lot of sense, I think. But I do think that despite that, we were able to do what we were able to do in an amazing way. So I think people have seen what Sonia is capable of as leader, especially over those 2 debates. We are just so pleased with how British Columbians responded to her. You know, her ratings went up while the other 2 leaders' ratings went down. And so I think that says a lot to the Greens' message and what we're getting across to British Columbians.
So fair to say there's a sense of optimism?
There is a sense of optimism tonight. That's part of being green.
Fair enough. Okay, well, we'll check in a little later tonight. Thank you so much, Dr. Lisa Gunderson. And we'll head back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you.
All right, April, thank you very much. The Greens leading in 4 ridings right now. Let's take a look at some prominent NDP MLAs. These are cabinet ministers. We're not just covering the island tonight. We're going to bring you some ridings from across the province. You see Melanie Mark there. She is the former Advanced Education, Skills and Training Minister, and she's been elected in the riding of Vancouver Mount Pleasant. Also seeking re-election from the Vancouver Fairview riding, we have George Heyman. He has not been elected yet, but he's got a pretty commanding lead over George Affleck, the former Vancouver City Councillor. George Heyman, of course, was the former Environment Minister, and he's seeking his 3rd term.
All right, also taking a look at George Chow this evening. He's the former Minister of State for Trade. Looks like he's got a pretty commanding lead there in the riding of Vancouver Fraserview. Moving on to another cabinet minister we're keeping an eye on, of course, David Eby. He's the Attorney General. Of course, his big portfolio, ICBC, he's got a commanding lead there. And let's break away and talk to the panel about this. I mean, this has been such a contentious issue, and it was brought up again. The Liberals want to privatize ICBC. The NDP want to give drivers rebates back for the COVID reality that means it's less expensive for the corporation. Who won or lost on this issue, do you think, Michael?
When I think of that, I hear the phrase dumpster fire. And I think this is one where the NDP, you know, you'd only use the last 16 years story about the Liberal being in power. But this one still, you know, he's seen as, I think, a strong managerial kind of style of politician, a lawyer by training. I don't think this one, this is part of the Liberal platform that really didn't connect. I think, you know, there's a lot of their ideas. The PST was a huge flop. You know, this was a major tax cut. Parts of their key elements of their platform and their approach just didn't seem to catch on as they'd hoped. And I think if it had, then David Eby might be, you know, he's still not out of the woods on that. That's a traditionally more Liberal riding that he stole, as we know.
That's Christy Clark's.
Yeah, Christy Clark's old riding. So, and Gordon Campbell's before that. So this has got old Liberal heritage. So, but, you know, for him, this was a good campaign because the issues around ICBC and others that the Liberals were pushing just, I don't think, clicked or resonated with a lot of the voters.
Do you think that any of these sort of seasoned politicians that are seeking re-election for the NDP have anything to worry about? I mean, a lot of familiar names that Islanders will know: Mike Farnworth, Harry Baines, David Eby, you saw them, Selena Robinson. These are key cabinet positions. And are you worried at all that their positions could be on the chopping block?
I don't have any worries, and just even what we've seen on the island as well. I mean, there's strong support, and again, I think people have been pleased with how the Horgan government has managed a minority government and working in collaboration, at least with the Greens for a little while, and then with the Greens and the Liberals on the pandemic. And I think yeah, so no worries on my part.
We're going to break in, and well, here we go. This is the biggest non-surprise of the night. John Horgan has been elected in his riding of Langford-Juan de Fuca. 22 of 80 polls reporting, and yeah, not much said about this one. John Horgan is secure for another term as MLA. Kim, did you want to say something?
Do you remember the last election? I guess people just thought he was a shoo-in, and he actually had to like beg people, no, please go vote. Just don't think I'm a shoo-in and not vote. And I remember looking at the results. Not that many people actually voted as a whole in that riding compared to others. So
that's right.
You know, if you look back, this whole thing got kicked off, you know, just down the street from where he lives, right in his riding. And I think that was a message to people. Look, I'm not forgetting about you. You know, I'm from the island. This is my home, and so that's why I did it. Okay, we're looking at a shot of John Horgan. He is in downtown Vancouver. It looks like he's looking at the camera there. He's not, though. He's there with his inner circle watching the election. We are going to hear from him at some point after 10:30. That's what party insiders are telling us. Okay, let's go to Oak Bay, Gordon Head now and get some updated results. Stace?
All right, here we have Murray Rankin, again, well known as an MP. He's leading with 45% with 20 of 96% of the votes polls reporting rather. And there we see Nicole Duncan from the Green Party is in second spot there with 32%. All right, let's take one quick look at Victoria Beacon Hill, and we're looking at Grace Lohr here. Of course, huge shoes to fill in this riding after beloved Carol James announced her retirement from politics earlier this year. A bit of a gamble, maybe endorsing Grace Lohr for this one. She's not as well known perhaps as some other options. Let's take time right now to head back out to Jasmine Balla, who has more on this Victoria Beacon Hill riding. Jasmine, what's going on?
Yeah, so I've actually just moved into the Vancouver Island NDP headquarters, and it's a bit quieter here than it usually would be, just with many candidates actually following the campaign from home and the results as they're coming in. So I'm actually here with Glenn Sanford, and he is the NDP's campaign director for Vancouver Island. So, you know, the NDP have started off pretty strong, Glenn. You know, how are you feeling about it? Are you feeling confident in an NDP win today?
Well, I'm feeling like it's been a very exciting campaign. I also feel like there's a lot of mail ballots, and so nobody wants to take anything for granted. We're encouraged by the results that we're seeing so far, but there's still a lot of counting to go.
Yeah, and what are you kind of watching out for as the night progresses?
Well, I think that we're keeping a close eye on literally every constituency on Vancouver Island. We're doing, you know, quite competitively in the ones we don't hold, and it looks like we're doing quite well in the ones that we do hold. So it's just a case of looking at how these results come in. And don't forget that we also believe that many of the mail ballots that won't be counted tonight tilt more towards the NDP and John Horgan. So that's something that you know, we'll be watching as the count goes on as well.
And what sort of ridings are kind of the ones, you know, we should be looking out for, keeping an eye on tonight?
Well, I think that Oak Bay, which is looking quite encouraging for us, is one. Saanich North and Cowichan Valley we're keeping close eye on. And the early results from Parksville-Qualicum are very encouraging as well. All of the other constituencies are NDP constituencies where we seem to be holding our own quite satisfactorily.
Yeah, last question for you is just, you know, how is, I guess, you know, the vibe of tonight for an election kind of compared to the usual that we're used to?
Well, I'll tell you, inside I'm feeling this.
We have broken away from Jasmine because it's less than an hour after the polls closed, and we can tell you that an NDP government has been declared. What that will be, whether it's majority or minority, at this point we don't know, but we can tell you the NDP government has been declared in the 42nd Parliament, the 42nd election campaign. That's it. The
John
NDP
Horgan's gamble paid off. It was a risk calling this election during a pandemic, but we are headed towards another NDP government. And like you said, Stace, we just have to wait for the results to come in. We still don't know if it'll be a minority or a majority. You see the count at the bottom. They're leading in 50 ridings right now. The number is 44. Can they get to 44? You see the popular vote right there. Let's bring in our panel to react to this breaking news. It took less than an hour.
Less than an hour.
And there was so much talk about would we be able to do this tonight? Yeah. And would there be enough votes there to call it based on the mail-in votes that we still have to wait for results, which will be 2 weeks? But your reaction to what you just heard?
Well, I'm glad 20 minutes ago I said we could make this call. So I'm feeling good. No, tonight's historic because, you know, looking at this man on the screen, John Horgan, he'll be the first ever NDP premier to have a second term. You know, you think back to Dave Barrett in the 70s, one term. Mike Harcourt, one term. Glenn Clark left, resigned, Ujjal Dosanjh, they get hammered in the 2001. This man has broken that curse, a sitting NDP premier getting elected into a second term. And if it goes from a minority to a majority government, this will be the first time since 1952 that this has happened. So there's a lot of, you know, this is a COVID campaign, as you said, Stacey, there's a lot of weird things about, or different and unique things about this, but this result is historic in that sense, both for this party and for the party system. And we have to wait to see how far down that Liberal support went, and perhaps the Green has come up at the expense more of the Liberals than of the NDP. So still early, but Boy, I didn't think we'd call it this soon.
I just wish we had the tape of you saying it earlier that we could throw back.
Well,
it happened, trust me.
Absolutely.
I'm counting on my family having filmed this.
There you go. I want to just, before we carry on, I want to just talk a bit about Andrew Wilkinson and his presence, his performance as Liberal Party leader. And this election, more than ever before, flash versus substance is so important because all the campaigning was done on the screen. There was no in-person, there was no, very, very little in the flesh connection with our candidates, with our leaders now. So the public presentation, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there's no substance behind John Horgan or the NDP, but he is a showman. He's a great speaker, he's a great orator. So how much did this hurt Andrew Wilkinson that he wasn't, self-admittedly, not that kind of a showman? That's not the way he rolls. So did that hurt them? Did it hurt them enough to make this result a reality for them this time?
I think it certainly did. And I think one of the challenges as well is when a leader is chosen, and I think we have to remember too, he had, I think it was 15.6% on the first ballot of the leadership race. And when leaders come from, if I can say that small of number, it's also difficult to build excitement and collaboration within the parties. And we could see that in the campaign where some of the Liberal members actually, were quite public in terms of questioning Wilkinson's responses to some of the campaign gaffes that went on. And there's actually, some public information as well just about issues of diversity within the parties. So there's a whole bunch of issues that I think, certainly have affected Wilkinson. But I mean, yeah, how do you reach out and touch somebody and you can't kiss babies and you can't hug anybody in this campaign? And even we saw Horgan earlier with a mask on and you can't see somebody smiling. And so it's been just such a strange campaign because it's so difficult to see that, see and feel that emotion.
Let's bring up some more results here. Looks like we're going to take a look at Victoria Swan Lake. You see Rob Fleming there. 11 polls reporting right now of 113. Lana Popham, we're hearing, in Saanich South has been re-elected. So that's a big win for Lana Popham. You see it there? She will be heading back to the legislature, defeating Kate O'Connor, the young Green candidate, who is in second place, and Rishi Sharma from the Liberals not far behind. All right, we're getting word now that Mary Griffin, who is keeping a close watch on Oak Bay Gordon Head, she's standing by with the Liberal candidate. Mary.
Thanks very much, Joe. I'm here with Roxanne Helm, the Liberal candidate. She just walked down here, not a short, just a short distance from your house. Now, you're hearing things about the mail-in ballots. What can you tell us about that, Roxanne?
Well, the residents of Oak Bay Gordon Head are a resilient group, and we've got a huge percentage of our voters did elect to do it by mail-in ballot. So I guess we're told that Elections BC won't be able to start opening those ballots till November 6th. So I guess it's up, well, from there it's up to them how long it takes. So yeah, we have a bit of a wait.
And a good chunk of the votes to Oak Bay Gordon Head came in through mail-in ballots, is that right?
Yes, about half, almost half. So.
And during the briefing yesterday with Elections BC, they were saying 500,000 ballots came in vote by mail. They can't even start to process that for the preparatory phase until tomorrow. And it's 13 days, and then they spend 3 days counting. But because of the volume of mail-in ballots, that could take even longer. So what does that do for you as a candidate?
We wait, and yeah, we wait and see what the residents of Oak Bay Gordon Head decide. And we'll know within a few weeks, but it's not the usual, like we would know tonight. So yeah, we'll wait and we'll be here.
And just in terms of your campaign, what did you hear on the campaign trail when you were out talking to people in the last 34 minutes?
We had a really positive reception. People were engaged. It was very stressful, mainly for the voters, but for us trying to adapt to campaigning in a pandemic. People have a lot of things to worry about, and adding an election was most unfortunate, and they felt that. So yeah, it was difficult. I would have loved to be able to engage with people more than we could, but we gave it our best and left it all on the field. We'll see how it goes.
Now, while you were walking here, our desk declared that it's an NDP government. What are your thoughts on that, and the fact that you may have to wait several weeks to get a final outcome in this riding?
Well, the good sport in me would like to congratulate Premier Horgan and his NDP colleagues. We'll just see if I'm part of the caucus or not, but we'll know in due time.
Thanks very much, Roxanne Helm. She was the Liberal candidate here in Oak Bay, Gordon Head. And back to you, Joe and Stacey.
All right, Mary, thanks very much for that. We're going to take a look at some more island results, but we can tell you that Andrew Wilkinson has been elected in his riding of in his Vancouver Porchena. Oh, there we go. Vancouver-Kilchena riding for Andrew Wilkinson. There he has been declared the winner, so his leadership is safe. Who knows what he will have to lead once our results are counted. All right, so more island standings now. Let's take a look at Saanich and the North Islands. We've got Adam Olsen there still in the lead over Zeb King. Looks like a comfortable lead at that for Adam Olsen, looking to maintain that, what is apparently some green momentum right now. Taking a look at Esquimalt Metchosin, it looks like Mitzi Dean, the incumbent there, is comfortably out in front of her green rival Andy McKinnon and RJ Senko there for the BC Liberals. Langford Juan de Fuca, we've told you, John Horgan has easily won his seat, looking there at 62% of the vote at this point.
As we continue to look at some of these ridings and these results, I want to bring in our panel, though, and ask you, I mean, Andrew Wilkinson has his seat, but I think at some point there's going to be a really tough discussion, or maybe it's not a tough discussion, about the future of his leadership. Are we going to hear something tonight, do you think? I mean, we heard earlier that at 9 o'clock the Liberals were going to speak. There was a suggestion that maybe it would be some sort of announcement. We're going to wait until all the mail-in ballots are counted before we say anything, which it might still be. Yep. But do you think that we could hear maybe that he's stepping down because of this result? I mean, it's far from over, but what we're seeing right now.
Well, again, pre-COVID, we would probably expect, with these results, we would probably expect sometime 10 or 11 o'clock tonight, Mr. Wilkinson stepping down. If we saw, you know, if his party drops down to 30 or 32 seats, which will be probably the poorest showing by the modern Liberal Party in over 30 years.
Which is not far off from where they're at right now.
Yeah. So that might be a typical scenario, Joe, but with the, you know, hope springs eternal. And so it's all those mail-in ballots that he's got to hope that the absentee votes and so forth. And that his advisor would say, you don't need to say anything tonight. You know, just wish everybody well, congratulate the Premier if you want to do that, and then wait it out for the 3 weeks and see. But, you know, as Kim said, when he was selected a few years ago, the party missed a chance for renewal. And they went with a candidate that allowed Mr. Horgan to talk about the last 16 years of 2001 to 2017 again and again and again. And it seemed to work. And a leader that didn't represent perhaps newer issues in a newer generation. So again, under normal circumstances, I'd say he would be stepping down tonight.
But even out of the gates, I mean, he was elected on, what, the 5th ballot or something like that, right? So there wasn't a clear consensus by anyone. I mean,
no, the party was divided.
Yeah. Let's get back to some of these island ridings. I think we have some more winners to declare.
We sure do. There's Sheila Malcolmson in Nanaimo, holding on to her seat fairly easily, it looks like, over Lisa Versaville there with 49% of the votes. So that's another one for the NDP. Right now they've got Nanaimo, they've got the Mid-Island, they've got Langford. Let's go to Qualicum. Parksville, Michelle Stilwell there. She trailed early on in the early going, but now with 45 polls reporting, she has taken the lead. It is a close one, though. Liberals and NDP up in Parksville, Qualicum in that one. And let's go back to our panel. I want to talk a bit more about the Liberal campaign and Andrew Wilkinson. And he seemed, every time he tried to get something going, get some momentum, declaring his platform, for instance. I mean, he was constantly faced with these kind of unexpected controversies, and more so than any election I remember, especially one that's only about a month long, of lots of instances of racial slurs, of sexism, of missteps by candidates, and really the Liberals came out on the wrong end of those kind of things. Kim?
Yeah. And I feel the same way. It seemed like day after day for about like 6 or 7 days, Wilkinson had an issue to address. And I think, you know, society has woke the past couple of years, and I think actually both Horgan and Wilkinson's comments about racism, systemic racism were questionable. I think they bothered a lot of people, but I think just in terms of how Wilkinson responded to some of the candidates' gaffes, I think upset some people. And also, you know, why did he, for example, address the Thronis issue kind of more strictly than other candidates? Why didn't he, you know, dismiss or ask other folks to leave the party? Why just one? So I think that unevenness and not dealing with the issue as quickly as possible, and perhaps not saying sorry in a really sincere, authentic manner.
Immediate manner, too. I mean, there was a delay there, and that delay hurt him, I think.
Yeah. Well, when you think he lost 3 days, and then he rolls out and he hides from the press, and then he rolls out his platform the morning of the debate, and that was the first time for the press to get at him about the Thornthwaite controversy, of which he was part of the Zoom meeting. So he wore that as well as a leader, but also as an individual politician participating.
And the Greens, as we were just talking there, are now, they've lost a seat where they're leading in 3 ridings right now. You know, one of the moments that stood out to me was in that televised debate, and you brought up white privilege, Kim. Yeah. Everybody remembers that, who watched remembers that question. Like, to me, that was a key moment in this campaign. And it's because of the contrast from Sonia Furstenau's response to Andrew Wilkinson's and John Horgan's. And I mean, it was such a powerful response that some people were saying after that may have just won her seat right there, that 30-second response.
Yeah. Well, she was thoughtful. She had, and it showed almost a generational divide too, perhaps a gender one, but also for progressives who wanted to hear a more thoughtful, in light of all that's gone on in the United States over the last several months and here in Canada, it was a surprisingly tone-deaf answer by others.
It didn't take long. We can now tell you that we are headed towards an NDP majority. John Horgan got his wish. We knew it was going to be an NDP government. It will now be more than that, 44 seats. Let's bring up the seats count right now. 51 seats to the NDP. They're leading or elected in. The Liberals with 32. And you heard, well, Michael, you said if it's around that 30 mark for the Liberals, we could see a change in leadership. But we now can say that it will be an NDP majority in this province.
And Joe, this is only the second time. The only other premier who's done this, and I had never thought I would put these two names in the same sentence, W.A.C. Bennett and John Horgan. W.A.C. Bennett had a minority in 52, called a snap election in 53, got his majority. Now John Horgan is only the second premier in BC history to replicate that rare maneuver, and he's in the hall of political snap election fame.
And breathing a huge sigh of relief.
Absolutely. Do you think, I just wonder, if he had waited till springtime, for instance, do you think that the result would have been the same? I mean, obviously a gamble, and he talked about it, you know, I've been thinking about it, I've been weighing this decision. It was not an easy thing for me to decide to do, to call this election right now in the thick of wave number 2. Would the result have been the same had he waited?
I think that's a really difficult question to ask and answer, and because we're just heading into the second wave. So in one sense, there's been some speculation that are there going to be some really difficult decisions that the next government has to make, and is it going to perhaps create more divisions in society? So that's a bit of an unknown. But Stacey, gosh, that came to my mind too. So why didn't he wait for a year and avoid all of this? So
another island seat going to Mitzi Dean. She has been elected in the riding of Esquimalt-Machosen right there, and the votes are still coming in. It's interesting. In the last week, we've seen the case count go up drastically in this province. You know, finally we hit that 200 mark. The next day, what was it, like 240 or something like that? And there was a part of me that thought, boy, you know, if this had happened at the beginning of the campaign, there might be this frustration and anger, and it would fuel that argument. Why are we doing this right now? But John Horgan must have been thinking, we just need to hold on. You know, it happened in the last week of the campaign that the case count shot up over 200. We just have to hold on.
Yep, and it shot up after arguably close to 1 million people had already voted.
Right, so good point.
So the timing, when we look back at this campaign, he got a lot of lucky breaks, and Andrew Wilkinson, the breaks, you know, didn't go his way. I mean, the only candidate that I can think of the NDP that ran into trouble was Nathan Cullen, surprisingly a veteran member of Parliament. But none of Mr. Horgan's homegrown cabinet ministers or local MLAs got into the same kind of issue problems that threw him off his platform or his game that they did for Mr. Wilkinson.
Do you think the Liberals and Greens hammered that it's a mistake to call the election, it's a mistake to call the election, it's unnecessary, why are we doing it? Did they hold on to that too long? Because at some point you're like, okay, it was a mistake, but we're not uncalling it. So, you know, we might as well just get over it and move on to some different things. You and I talked earlier, Kim, about how maybe Sonia Furstenau should have, you know, spent more time trying to connect with young mothers, with working women, you know, and she didn't. So what do you think? Did they hammer that message too much?
I think it was too much and too long. I think, you know, maybe 2 days, and then just because a campaign is so short, I think it was really important to focus on other issues. And she eventually did and started putting out you know, bits of the platform and then released it. I think it was the 3rd or 4th week of the campaign. But I do think that's the case.
Look at this, folks. One vote between Michelle Stillwell. Is this Courtney-Comox in 2017? What am I looking at here? Yeah. One vote separates Michelle Stillwell from Adam Walker, the NDP candidate. This is shaping up to be the tightest race on Vancouver Island tonight.
And we're just about half a number of polls reporting here too, so we'll be keeping an eye on that one. Let's check back in with Jasmine Balla once more as we head to Victoria and NDP headquarters. Jasmine.
Yeah, that's right. I'm here with Glenn Sanford, the NDP's campaign director for Vancouver Island. And so we've just actually projected a NDP majority. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's a super exciting evening, and one of the things that it tells me is on Vancouver Island, the #1 issue that kept coming up was how to get through COVID and have a strong recovery, and people had a very strong interest in health care and seniors care. And I think that that was something that really resonated, obviously, and it looks like people trust John Horgan and the BC NDP to move us forward through the COVID pandemic.
And were there any surprise ridings or surprise results?
Well, I mean, the results are still coming in, and I think that even though we've been called for majority government, we don't know the results of every riding yet, and there are still a lot of mail ballots. So at this point, I'd say it's still too early to be surprised, but I am really encouraged to see how well we're doing in some constituencies like Parksville-Qualicum, which historically haven't been that strong for us, are looking pretty neck and neck right now.
And was this sort of an outcome that you guys were expecting?
Well, we found when we were talking to voters about health care and seniors care that we were getting a very good response. And it was a different kind of campaign, so it was hard to know exactly what to expect, and that we weren't knocking door to door. We were talking to people on the phones a lot more, and you know, it was a little bit harder to gauge than a normal election, but what we felt very strongly was that the emphasis on health care was really resonating with people.
And I guess last question is just when you guys heard that it might be a NDP majority, what was the reaction in here?
Well, you know, it's funny, it's not the usual kind of party that we have where it's a huge roar, but believe me, inside, it's that same sense of, wow, this is incredible. It's incredible news. It's exhilarating, and you really feel like it is amazing to be part of a team where voters appear to be putting their trust in the direction we're going in.
All right, thanks again for talking with us, Glenn. That is Glenn Sanford, NDP's campaign director for Vancouver Island. Back to you, Stacey and Joe.
Thanks so much, Jasmine. Of course, there's been so much action happening here on the island that we've been trying to get to some of the more interesting ridings on the Lower Mainland, and now is our chance to do that. So let's start with someone that many folks may not have heard of before this election campaign. For all the wrong reasons, people know who Laurie Thronis is now, guys. And he is, although he appears there as a BC Liberal, he was booted from the Liberal Party. He is running as an independent for comments he made regarding eugenics and how he compared that to free contraceptives that were being offered to lower-income folks there. So Laurie Thrones leading that riding. It is close, though. We're talking 815 votes to 802. And guys, we're going to keep rolling these results for you from the Lower Mainland as we chat about that. Again, I mentioned earlier, guys. Oh, I see a deep breaths there coming from you, Michael.
Well,
what's going on?
This is the other Liberal candidate that got into some hot water, Jane Thornthwaite, with the comments to Bowen Ma. And right now, it looks like perhaps that hurt her chances here. Again, it's early, but we see Susie Chant out in the front.
And this is traditional Liberal stronghold, North Van territory. This is running for a third term. If that gaffe had not happened, we might be seeing different numbers. But this shows, I think, a real response to that. And this could be a real steal for the NDP.
Let's continue this BC tour as we jump around to some key ridings. There you see Jas Johal, the incumbent in Richmond, Queensborough, the former journalist. He is in second place. Again, very close right now, but it is a tight race between the NDP and Liberals. And as we look at some of these ridings, and we'll get to Surrey too, in the, you see Surrey Cloverdale, these are ridings that if the Liberals don't win, it's going to suggest something happened.
Absolutely. And Jas Johal on that riding was one that the Liberals were really counting on. He's a very well-known, charismatic leader or candidate, and I know they were counting on that one. And I can tell you, I'm not sure if we're going to have the boards there. We can tell you that the NDP is leading in both Maple Ridge ridings in Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge. That's Lisa Bear, is the former tourism minister. She's got the advantage there. And then Bob Deeth, who upset Wynne in 17 there. He has got the lead on Councillor Chelsea Matos. So both Maple Hill Maple Ridge ridings, there we see the lead there.
NDP riding. The Surrey Cloverdale we just saw a second ago, again, looks like it could be a steal. That was Liberal. The NDP did really well in the Surrey ridings last election, but that was one of the ones that remained Liberal last time. But look at this. We've got the NDP looking at, again, early days, but this is one that they thought they could take away from the Liberals in that area.
Lisa Bear just came up prior to this. She is elected, so she is going back for her second term. She was elected in 2017. The former Minister of
Tourism.
Thank you, Stacey.
You bet.
Love it. Oh, yeah.
It's teamwork.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Langley. Mary Polak in second place here. 58 polls reporting Mary Polak's one of these long-time Liberal MLAs, and there's a lot of them. Many of them aren't running, but she was one of the ones that some people said she could be in a tight race here.
Well, this is an interesting one. This was a big Sky Train extension riding right here, and John Horgan campaigned in this riding hard, pushing that Sky Train extension out to Langley. And but this would be a big change here. Mary Polak has held that riding for 15 years.
Well, this is how you get to a majority government. You've got to steal, you've got to win some traditional Liberal strongholds, and this is what this is telling us.
Former Minister of Health, Minister of Environment, Minister of Transportation. All right, some big news from the island. I know that we're looking at Abbotsford West here, but Adam Olsen has been elected. That has been declared. So Adam Olsen is heading back to the legislature. You see it there. A lot of people thought Zeb King, the Central Saanich councillor, would give Adam Olsen a run for his money. Not the case. The Greens will have representation at the legislature. So Adam Olsen is heading back to the legislature.
And just to the panel one more time, how much of this is a protest vote? I know a lot of people thought that the Greens were really wronged by this snap election. So unfair, they said, to call it when Sonia Furstenau had just become leader and didn't even have a chance to get the candidates in place. So I wonder about that. And as we've talked about a little bit before, how much of this Green vote, the popular vote, is because, you know what, that was just not fair what you did.
I think there's some backlash, but I think there's two crises taking place. One is the pandemic and the other one is the Green. And the pandemic crisis has been, receiving lots of attention, but a lot of people also care about what the heck our world is going to look like in the coming decades. And so I think you're hearing those voices and those votes coming out. So it's supporting the Green Party platform as well.
And I think to Adam Olsen's credit, I think he worked hard. He's a good constituency MLA, a good profile. And as you said earlier, I think Sonia Furstenau's moment in that debate helped him, helped her.
Yeah.
Mike de Jong is heading back to the legislature. This is his 8th victory. He has been there. He was first elected in 1994, the former Minister of Finance and Minister of Health. Mike DeYoung wins in his riding.
Venerable MLA.
Yes, indeed. And this is one that we wanted to watch going in. Sam Sullivan there, looks like his seat may be in jeopardy here. He's trailing Brenda Bailey now. And we were talking earlier about Brenda Bailey, and if she does manage to hold on to the seat, that she will be a cabinet minister for certain. You were saying that, Kim, earlier, that she's just got that kind of personality. She is a fascinating woman. She co-founded and runs and owns the first female-operated video game studio in Canada. And she sounds like a real go-getter. What do you think, Kim?
Yeah. Absolutely, and I think she is minister material. And just what I heard too, so just in watching these seats come up and just the strong NDP support, that's what I heard in the last couple of days, is that there was so much NDP momentum that some were predicting a complete orange crush, actually, in the Vancouver area.
Here's a question I have. I mean, the NDP came out around, I think it was around 6 o'clock, saying we are going to speak at 10:30. At 10:30 tonight, John Horgan will speak. They must be watching this in their hotel room in Vancouver thinking, maybe we can bump that up a little bit. Do we have to wait till 10:30?
Maybe not, because we just heard that Murray Rankin has been elected in Oak Bay Gordon Head. So that was the one that we were keeping such a tight eye on. We thought it could go a number of different ways here, and he has won handily. So Murray Rankin has taken Oak Bay Gordon Head in that in that orange wave.
The other thing we'll be looking at is a popular vote for the Greens, because in many of these ridings, they are in second place.
They're doing strong seconds. I think at the expense, we hear it a lot this election, but even more so the last election, from NDP candidates and officials about how Green would take away from the orange, the NDP vote. What we're seeing tonight is quite different. I think Green is taking from the Liberal side of the equation. And again, speaking of ministerial material, Murray Rankin got to be next Attorney General, perhaps.
I was going to joke and say, has he been in politics? How come?
Well, he used to work.
Why do you say that, Michael?
He used to work at UVic with me.
Some more ridings from the Lower Mainland. Surrey-Whalley. It looks like Bruce Ralston. He has been re-elected with 69% of the vote. 29 polls reporting there. Burnaby Lougheed, Katrina Chen, she is well out in front over the Liberal and Green candidates.
I was just going to say, we did see that Harry Baines, the former Minister of Labour, has been re-elected as well in his riding of Surrey-Newton. So looks like a lot of these cabinet ministers will be back in action. Here we go, Burnaby Dees Lake. We've got another NDP incumbent re-elected. That's Ann Kang, and
she's a student in our school, actually.
Is she?
Yeah,
Excellent.
I taught her this summer.
Minister
awesome.
of Citizen Services as well.
Very good.
David Eby, he is in front right now with 40 polls reporting in Vancouver Point Grey. I think many believe that he will be back in. At one point, there was talk before John Horgan became leader that perhaps he could be the next leader of this party, the NDP. Vancouver Fraserview, we have George Chow, the incumbent. He has been re-elected. He is heading back to the legislature, defeating the Liberal candidate there and the Green candidate. And it looks like George Heyman, we've told you this one already, he has defeated George Affleck, the former Vancouver councillor. I keep looking, Mike, at the Liberal leading count in the bottom left there, 30. You mentioned that 30 as the sort of benchmark for whether or not this is going to suggest that we need to, refresh this party, find a new leader, look inside, change things up. And we keep that 30 hasn't changed.
Yeah, no, that's again, this is a historic achievement for Mr. Horgan tonight. Minority to majority, first NDP premier to win back-to-back. For Mr. Wilkinson, this will be humble pie tonight. A very disappointing result for a party that dominated EC politics for so long over the last 35 years.
This is a tight one. We're back on the island, Victoria Beacon Hill, and when you look at the number of mail-in votes, and there were a lot of them, this could be one of those ones that might take some time to be to have a winner. We'll keep jumping around here on the island. Victoria Swan Lake. Rob Fleming doing very well, Stace.
Yeah, it looks like Rob Fleming is well on his way to re-election. It turns out that a career in politics was a good move for Mr. Fleming. He seems to be doing pretty well. What other ridings do we have to report from now? We're going to check in very, very quickly, very shortly, with April Lawrence at Green Party headquarters. And let's head to April now. April.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. Not your typical election. Usually you'd be hearing cheers and the crowd would be going crazy, but Adam Olsen has been declared the winner in Saanich North and the Islands. He's here in the room, but of course the supporters aren't here, so there's no one to cheer. He's making his way around each of the media booths doing interviews. He certainly has a smile on his face. This is exactly what the party was hoping for, that him and Sonia, who is leading in her riding of Cowichan as well, would retain their seats. We heard that the party officials say that earlier. That really was what they were hoping for tonight. That looks to be like what they have achieved, as well picking up potentially another seat, their first off Vancouver Island, West Vancouver, sea to sky. They had said going into this election night that they were feeling good, that they felt that that riding was in reach. They are leading there right now, so they're feeling quite good about possibly picking that up. They were leading for a little bit in Nelson Creston. That looks like that candidate has fallen back a little bit. I can see the party officials. They're jumping, they're cheering. Something good has happened. Sonia?
West Vancouver and Sonia.
West Vancouver and Sonia both declared. So ahead. Okay, so this is the excitement that's happening here tonight. There is some jumping. There's a few party officials here. They're very excited. This night is going very well for them. Sonia, first to know, they're saying now declared in her riding, and things looking good in West Vancouver, sea to sky. So we're waiting our turn for Adam Olsen. We will bring him to you shortly, but as exciting as things can be here tonight, they are exciting. Back to you guys.
Thank you, April. We were having a little chuckle over the gentleman behind you that seemed to not know where he was for a moment there. Well, it's an unusual election. It's an unusual election night.
Oh my gosh, we'll take any fun and joy we can get in these crazy times.
That West Van Sea to Sky riding was held by the Liberals. Jordan Sturdy was the former MLA for that riding, but it looks like, as you just heard from April, that third seat that you see there is in West Van Sea to Sky. So that is huge
history,
news
right?
for the Greens to have a seat on the Lower Mainland.
Yep. No, this is Kim. You want to?
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking. So previously there was an election in New Brunswick, and they managed to retain the Green seats there. They didn't grow one. I guess the Greens didn't grow one there, but we grew one here. Yeah. So that is history. But I'm thinking too, just in the last federal election, there were so many new second place candidates in that election. So I think just Green support has been growing across Canada. And so that was just, what, a year ago? So that's what I'm wondering as well. You know, there's a lot of federal Greens, and that support hasn't died, and perhaps it's growing.
Well, and Paul Manley in Nanaimo, I mean, winning that seat. You know,
I wondered going into tonight, you know, last election, Green hit 16% of the popular vote throughout the whole province. Now here on the island it was much higher than that. I think we're going to see that again tonight. We're going to see numbers in the 20s and 30s and maybe even a little higher. Again, back to your question or comment earlier, Joe, about the future of the Liberal Party. It's also going to be looking at, you know, the Greens are going to be looking at tonight as a success story. And they resonated with voters in a way the Liberals have failed to. Liberals are a big old machine. And you've got this little a leader with 6 days in the job, and she's pulling this off. So there's going to be some I mean, we always talk about the NDP and the Greens, their interaction, but what is the Liberals' relationship with the Greens now?
A leader 6 days on the job, 3.5 years propping up the NDP to make it all happen, right? So I imagine that Greens across the province are celebrating what we're seeing here tonight. We're going to go for another trip up and down the island. I think we're going to go up to the North Island, work our way down. Parksville, Qualicum, a lot of people waiting to see what's happening there. It was tight last time we were there. Nothing has been declared on the North Island. Michelle Babchuk out to a lead over Alexandra Morton, but only 39 polls reporting.
It looks like she is well in command of that one, though, as we move down from the North Island to Courtney-Comox. There's Runaway Leonard, and it looks like she's well on her way to victory as well. There are just 31 polls reporting of 106, but that is very encouraging news for her. And it looks like, as Dean Stoltz predicted earlier in the night, we weren't going to see a similar nail-biter as we did in 2017. We told you earlier she was the first one on the island to be declared for the NDP, Josie Osborne. She well in hand over her two nearest competitors. Carrying on down the island here, Parksville, Qualicum. This is the one seems like is taking a big turn here. We've got the NDP's Adam Walker now out in front by well, gosh, just over 100 votes there over the incumbent Michelle Stilwell with 70 polls reporting. This is maybe one of the ones that we have to wait a few weeks to find out who's going to take this one and bring on those mail-in ballots.
Nanaimo, Sheila Malcolmson. She has been re-elected in Nanaimo, defeating Leah Versaville and Kathleen Jones. We'll keep on going down here as we get to Nanaimo, North Cowichan. We still can't call this one. Doug Routley is off to a sizable lead over Chris Istis and Duck Patterson. We'll go to the Cowichan Valley. This one we can call. Sonia Furstenau, one of 3 Green MLAs who have won tonight right now. She must be very happy. We were talking about it earlier, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more as this night progresses. And we'll probably hear from her soon. You want to jump in, Mike?
No, fine. No.
you just...
I was just going to say, like, she was 7 days on the job. I'd like to know how better she'd do if she was, like, had the job for 2 weeks.
You know what? I wanted to talk about this. I mean, there she is. She's the new leader and you know, struggling to field candidates, and they've done so well tonight so far. And you talked, Michael, about the Liberal machine. So does their utter collapse tonight mean that machine needs to be reworked from the ground up? Because I would think, you know, I mean, it was a snap election, but it was not a surprise election. I mean, everybody could see it coming. It was the worst kept secret in the province. So why did it seem like the Liberals were so unprepared and were so last minute? This machine has existed for decades and decades. Why did they seem to be so caught by surprise?
And they were announcing candidates through the spring and summer. I mean, they, in many ways, anticipated this call. They were getting ready, you know, unlike the Greens, who were in the midst of a leadership renewal and race, and they were absorbed with that. So again, no, that's one of the big stories. One will be how well the Green have done. The other will be the surprising, disappointing results of the party that used to dominate this province's politics.
There are Liberals who will tell you, though, that this may be one of the best things to happen to this party, in the sense that this gives the Liberals 4 years to regroup, hit reset, perhaps find a new leader. We don't know yet if Andrew Wilkinson will step down. Well, we're going to hear from him later tonight. But the fact that they were defeated, the fact that the NDP got a majority, it is time to sort of look within and just pause for a moment. And again, that word reset.
And we haven't mentioned the Conservative Party, which is, you know, they did run some candidates and a few here on the island, but that will be part of that conversation too, Joe, what the future of the BC Liberals, that strange beast called the BC Liberals, and its relationship both to the old Conservative Party and Liberals and Green.
Island candidates who've been elected right now: Adam Olson, Murray Rankin, Sonia Furstenau, Josie Osborne, Lana Popham, John Horgan, you see that? Rob Fleming, Mitzi Dean. These are well-known Island politicians, and they are all going back for another term.
And Sheila Malcolmson.
And Sheila Malcolmson, yes. Too close to call right now in Parksville-Qualicum. The third Green seat that you see there is in West Van Sea to Sky on the Lower Mainland. That seat's stolen from the Liberals.
If I can jump in, one of the challenges I think the Liberals had as well is they've been known as the party that is, you know, talked about fiscal restraint and balancing the budget and dealing with the debt. And so, you know, that fiscal reform or fiscal restraint really wasn't an issue. And I think it was more kind of if you talked about that, you better be careful, because we're just in, you know, we're in survivor mode. So it was almost like a spending spree throughout the election. So I don't think that resonated with, you know, that traditional fiscal restraint message or tagline they have.
And they tried to anticipate that. You know, early on, Wilkinson and his people talked about deficits. We're going to be okay. They wanted to get that off the table. They wanted to get that bugaboo of, oh, you're going to paint us as the fiscal cutters. This is exactly the same problem that Aaron O'Toole is going to be facing in Ottawa. It's what's the future platforms of Conservative parties that their strength has been fiscal responsibility at a time of a pandemic.
And I think the NDP has worked really, really hard to try and get rid of that monkey on their back, that they're not fiscally responsible. I mean, you put Carol James in as finance minister, who's, you know, who's beloved by everyone on both sides of the house, and who just exudes that confidence and that sense of trust. And they've worked really hard to make their platform include fiscal response and responsibility, even while they're trying to manage this pandemic and help people from, you know, succumbing to economic collapse.
So who will be the next finance minister will be another key question, because you're absolutely right. It was part of their success coming into this and winning this election, who will fill Carol James's shoes in that finance portfolio? Key question.
There's the popular vote as it stands right now. As we approach 10 o'clock, boy, time flies, eh?
Yeah.
It's almost 10. I think we can start discussing, hearing from the leaders. We're going to hear from all of them, I imagine, at some point tonight. Sonia Furstenau, she will be speaking down at the Delta. April Lawrence will be there for that. And then we will hear from John Horgan and Andrew Wilkinson. Again, earlier tonight, it was 9 o'clock that the Liberals said Andrew Wilkinson would talk. They pulled that back and said, no, we'll wait. I believe, is April standing by, guys? Are we going to check in with her? Not yet. She's not ready. So sometime soon, though, we will get those podium shots and get those leaders up to the microphone.
All right, I think we are going to go to Jasmine Balla now, who's at our local NDP headquarters, just a stone's throw from our studio here. Jasmine, I don't see Jasmine in our screen. Oh, there she is. Jasmine, what have you got for us?
Yeah, the mood here is pretty excited. They're pretty optimistic about how the night's turning out to be. We talked to the campaign manager earlier, and he's, sort of cautiously optimistic. It's a big night here. This is a rare moment where an NDP premier has been re-elected, especially with a majority. So the mood here, again, optimistic. It's a little quiet here, but they are confident, and we have been hearing some cheers from the other room. So it sounds like it's a good night for them. They're also excited about how the race is kind of shaping off, particularly off of Vancouver Island, kind of over in Vancouver on the mainland, where the headquarters is and where Premier John Horgan is actually right now. So they appear to have picked up some seats from the Liberals. So that's kind of how it's looking. Back to you, Stacey and Joe.
All right, Jasmine, thanks so much. We do have a clarification to make as far as the Green Party is concerned. The Sea to Sky has not been called for the Green Party at this point, though they are leading. Yeah, there was some excitement down there when we were checking in with April Lawrence, Adam Olsen and Sonia Furstenau, very excited, but it hasn't been called yet. They are leading in West Van Sea to Sky. So we'll keep you updated on that. Here is Chilliwack Kent. We can't call this one yet, but Laurie Thronis is out to well, not much of a lead, a slim lead. It is tight in Chilliwack, Kent. Laurie Thronis will be an independent. It was interesting, though, Andrew Wilkinson was asked, would you ever take him back into the party? And it wasn't a definitive, no, we won't. It was, well, if he changes his ways and makes a few changes, maybe we will. So do you think we could see him join the Liberals? I mean, at this point, it doesn't look like it will matter much.
No. Well, I was just saying off camera a minute ago to Kim, if we see a change in the leadership, Mr. Wilkinson steps down, will we see who will throw their hats in the ring? I mean, Mr. Thronis represents a certain segment of the Liberal Party in BC.
Let's play the name game. Who will throw their hat in the name? Who do you think? Do you have anyone that you think would make a good next leader for the party?
Well, Kim mentioned this earlier about Christy Clark helped revive the party. Gave them a new breath because even though she'd been an insider, she had left and she came in looking like she'd been an outsider, and she didn't wear some of the baggage of that last term of the Gordon Campbell government. Mr. Wilkinson was so integral and tied to the full 16 years in one way or the other. You would think that renewal means looking outside the party, or now there'll be some caucus members who will want to run, but that would suggest to me that renewal really means looking for some fresh faces to. Although Michael Lee, I think
well, he tried to run last time when they had the leadership.
I think we're going to hear from Diane Watts.
Yeah.
I think we might see her hat being thrown in, but I agree. I think it's going to be somebody from outside. And this reminds me too, just of the federal election with Andrew Scheer not doing so well, and then just wondering when is he going to resign? It's not if, it's when, and I think that's the question here.
For Mr. Wilkinson, yeah.
And of course, Mr. Wilkinson, I think, suffers a little bit from our proximity and our interest in American politics. So you've got the two presidential candidates who are privileged, older white men, and you've got Mr. Wilkinson, who's a lawyer, who's a doctor. He comes across as being, a bit elitist and privileged. John Horgan works very hard to maintain his boy next door. I'm calling the election with garbage cans over my shoulder and going to the lacrosse game every chance I get. Do you think that has an impact as well? I mean, is the Liberal Party desperate for more diversity at the top end?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so too. And just something came out in the last couple of days from the Liberal diversity committee, and actually the campaign chair just, saying, we need to address diversity in this party in a meaningful way. And that's why I think Thronus was removed, because also that social conservative side of the party has been questioned. And so, I agree with Michael just in terms of, it's time for the Liberal Party to figure out exactly who they are, and to also, well, even in this election, only 1/3 of their candidates were women, and they were the least diverse as well. So there's some work to do within the provincial Liberals.
By my count right now, we have at least 9 MLAs decided here, or 9 ridings decided on Vancouver Island. I know Parksville-Qualicum, we're still waiting for a result there. Victoria Beacon Hill was another one that was very close. You see Sonia Furstenau has won the Cowichan Valley. And this looks to be a tight one, but Adam Walker, a few hundred votes ahead of Michelle Stilwell, who is seeking her 3rd term. This will be one to watch. I believe there are a couple others that still haven't been called yet, but we'll work our way through them here now and see where we're at.
And see those green numbers there in Parksville-Qualicum. If they continue to grow, I think it's at the expense of Michelle Stilwell and the Liberals. So there's an interesting dynamic going on there.
Here's another one we can't call yet. Courtney-Comox. Looks by the numbers that we may get a decision soon, but it's still a little too early. But Courtney-Comox, Parksville-Qualicum, and Victoria Beacon Hill, all too early to call right now. And there is Victoria Beacon Hill. Grace Lohr, though, trying to take that seat, or taking that seat and run with it, I guess you could say, from Carol James. She's got about a 500 vote lead over Jen Nielsen, the Green candidate. So those are the 3 that we're watching. There might be one more if we keep jumping around here. But many of the island ridings races have been decided so far.
One of the things I'm just in terms of identifying success. So Greens have gained, maintained 3 seats from, say, 2017. And it appears that they're winning more kind of, coming in second. But the loss is their influence. And that's what is going to be interesting. I'm already talking about the next election, is just, how much are we going to be hearing about them in the next 4 years? Because, they're not going to be holding the power. So that's one of the challenges I think they are going to have to face.
What do you think the interest was in voting this time around? In 2017, voter turnout was about 61%. Given people taking advantage of different options for voting this time, how do you think this year will compare to 2017?
The New Brunswick turnout was about the same as the previous pre-COVID election. What we saw this time was a continuing shift in people's preferences on how to vote. And we're not quite sure yet whether it's going to actually grow the vote overall, or whether it's just a shifting of those who were already inclined to vote, Stacey, whether they're just, I think, once we move to online voting, that could really, I think, shift numbers up. But what we're doing right now is more advanced days, better hours. The mail-in suddenly becomes the new thing. We won't know until the next election whether that sticks as something that really people like, or would they like to get back to that idea of, I know some people really miss the idea of being able to go into the school gym or the church basement and experience kind of almost like a Norman Rockwell painting of a democratic village experience.
Yeah, they want to put that piece of paper in that ballot box.
I thought more people would want to vote because of what you just laid out.
Yeah.
I was talking to our producer, Richard, who's, and we were going to vote together today. It was going to be this, and he voted early. One of these many people that decided to mail their ballot in early or vote in advance voting. But I think, it'll be interesting to see how much of this is because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And how much of this is just, people want to get things done early.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got some news from Victoria Beacon Hill. Grace Lohr has won Victoria Beacon Hill. That is some big news. Perhaps not that surprising, but it looked like in the last little bit that the Greens had a fighting chance there.
Well, they've always liked their chances here federally and provincially over the last several elections. And it's nice to see that a candidate who had the blessings of a very popular incumbent, Carol James, you got to earn it. You got to get every vote out, and this wasn't a cakewalk. And it shows the progressive again, the melting presence there of the Liberal vote.
Are you surprised at how well Jen Nielsen did in this one? She's relatively unknown. She did get the she did get the support of Ben Isett, who's a councillor who's somewhat polarizing, but she's done very, very well and was within a few votes of taking this one in Victoria.
Well, it's a question of, do you vote for a candidate? Do you vote for the label or party? I think a lot of the Green vote is because it's Green, and also because of Sonia Furstenau's performance in this campaign. I think those having a popular new leader and a clear brand or a clear platform, even though it came out late, people kind of identify with that philosophy.
Let's hear from one of those Green winners. We will go back to the Delta. April Lawrence is standing by with a guest. April.
Yes, a very special guest. No doubt one of the most exciting nights here at the Delta tonight was when Adam Olsen was declared elected in Saanich North and the Islands, and leader Sonia Furstenau declared elected in Cowichan. Congratulations, Adam.
Thank you very much.
How are you feeling? You guys leading in West Vancouver sea to sky. I mean, are you happy with what you're seeing tonight?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that going into this election, there's no doubt that British Columbians would have looked at the work that we had ahead of us and saw that there was a steep hill to climb. We've been successful so far in holding Saanich North and Cowichan Valley, and let's hope that we can continue to grow it.
Now, last government, the Green Party held the balance of power. No question, was a very good position for your party to be in. Tonight, we're hearing NDP majority. Whether you have 2, 3 seats, how do you plan to have your voices heard and make some sort of impact again in government?
Well, I think what's important for us is to hold party status, and that's a really important aspect of it. But I think it's important that we don't diminish the role of opposition. The BC Greens played an important role as an opposition party as well. A lot of people look at the relationship that we had with the BC NDP and consider us as part of government, but we were also an opposition party. Sonia and I moved forward a lot of really important issues, and Andrew as well, in moving forward issues around salmon and old growth. We were the only party in the entire legislature talking about old growth. We're the only party talking about Site C. We're the only party talking about LNG. These are issues that we have to continue to hold government accountable on. We're going to have the opportunity to stand in question period. We're going to have the opportunity to stand in budget estimates. We're going to have the opportunity to build relationships with people in the communities across the province and build those movements and momentum around these issues to hold government accountable. You know, Mr. Horgan wanted to have a majority government so he could make all the decisions. Well, he's going to have to be held accountable for the decisions that he's going to make, and it's, you know, long past the time now where you can blame the previous government. This is on them, and we have a job to hold them accountable.
I've spoken to you about this before, and you've spoken about it quite passionately, but there's sometimes a push to elect an MLA in your riding that is in government, and an understanding that is a better position for your riding. If you have someone in there, they have a louder voice, it's a better position to be in. Come next election, you know, how are you going to face that again, and what do you say to those people who hold on to that belief continuously?
Well, I mean, obviously that was one of the key narratives from another party in this riding, and that so far is not shown to be what the people of Saanich North and the Islands were prepared to vote for. I think that there is a sophistication in our riding that understands that the legislature is made up of 87 individuals represented from their community to go and do a job. I was able to demonstrate that I was able to do the job as an opposition, but also working with government, and then as well, a huge amount of the work that gets done as an MLA is in the constituency, and it's about building those relationships and nurturing trustful relationships and nurturing really strong networks, and that's what I focused on as a constituency MLA, and that's what I'm going to continue to build. So I think the narrative of, oh, you need to get someone in government in order to be able to get anything done is, frankly, it's very tired, and it's actually a diminishment of our democracy. It's one that needs to be pushed back strongly against, because if the only people that matter are the 24 or 25 cabinet ministers, then what's the use of electing anybody else? You know, you may as well just elect a premier and just move on with it. And I think what's important to focus on here is that I have a role, I'm accepting that role, and I'm going to make the absolute best of that role every day that I have the ability to do that.
Lastly, Adam, I just want to ask you, some believe that the reason that John Horgan and the NDP called this snap election was because they wanted to get rid of the Greens. They wanted to take those seats back and have them for themselves. You've been declared elected, Sonia's been declared elected, and you may have picked up another seat off of Vancouver Island tonight. Anything you'd say to John Horgan and the NDP?
Well, no, I mean, I think that we're just going to go and do the job, and we're obviously going to go back and have a relationship with the other elected MLAs. It doesn't matter whether they're in Liberal seats or in NDP seats. We're going to continue to work collaboratively. I think there's a misconception that the legislature is all what you see in an election or all what you see in question period. There's a lot of productive work that gets done in the legislature, and we're gonna make sure that we fulfill our role on behalf of British Columbians. And you know, I think that the last 3.5 years there's been an opportunity to kind of continue to shift blame over the last 16 years. Almost every question and question period response started with, for 16 years the Liberals did this. Well, guess what? You have to be careful what you wish for, because now the responsibility is entirely on your shoulders. The decisions are yours. You've made them. You have to own them, and you have to be responsible for them. And we're going to be doing a job to ensure, as an opposition member, which Sonia and I have got quite a bit of experience being as well, that we're going to be raising those issues.
Okay. Thank you so much, Adam. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
All right, back to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, April. It looks to me, and Stacey, we've just been kind of doing the name game and looking at the ridings while April was talking there. It looks to me like there's 2 island ridings right now that we still don't have a winner in, Nanaimo, North Cowichan, and Parksville, Qualicum. Last check, Michelle Stilwell was about 200 votes behind Adam Walker in that riding. And here is Nanaimo, North Cowichan. Again, Doug Routley out in front by about 400 votes. This is one of 2 island ridings that has yet to be declared.
And keep in mind that if these are really close finishes, we may not be able to declare winners in these electoral districts tonight. We may have to wait for those mail-in ballots. Don't forget, 500,000 mail-in ballots to be counted by Elections BC in the next 3 weeks. So there is a lot that still could be up in the air and not decided tonight. We feel grateful here that we were able to so early on call a majority government for John Horgan and the NDP here.
And before we threw to April, I think we were still waiting for a winner in Comox Courtney, but Ronald Ray Leonard has been elected there, so that one we can put a check mark next to that one.
I think she would call that a landslide tonight.
I think so.
We were also getting some updates from around the province. Nathan Cullen has won his riding up north in Stikine, so he is going from federal politics to provincial politics, and many think that he could have a high-profile position in that cabinet.
You got to wonder when you see Murray Rankin and Nathan Cullen, who were very prominent, successful federal MPs in the NDP, retiring, leaving politics, moving on, and suddenly becoming candidates, and then suddenly MLAs. You got to wonder what the conversations were that would draw them in. Both clearly ministerial material.
I wonder, there was 7 cabinet ministers that opted not to run again this time around. It seemed like an extraordinarily high number, and I wonder if you think if it was just coincidence. Was it COVID that made them say, okay, I'm done, I want to spend more time with my family in my home riding? Or do you think, is it possible that it was some kind of protest against calling the election at this point? I mean, 7 seems like a huge number. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think there was a combination. Someone like Michelle Mungle, it was for family reasons, I think. Someone like Shane Simpson, he was an old warrior. He'd had a good run. He'd done, I think, sterling job as Minister of Social Development and Poverty Reduction. I think similarly with Scott Fraser, and they were both roommates. They kind of shared an apartment here in town. I think they both sort of thought, we're done, in their mid-late 60s. So I think it was a combination of factors. But you're quite right. 7 was like a big wow. It was like, was that an exodus that was people that would have liked to have stayed for the full term into next October? But it doesn't seem it put any of those seats in jeopardy, really.
And that was one of our first clues that, an election really is coming. It is going to happen when all these resignations started coming in. That's really kind of how we first knew that it was going to be a sure thing this fall, wasn't it, Kim?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said earlier, it was, just a terrible secret around the province. I wonder, though, too, just in terms of people not running, I think being a politician these days is a really difficult thing. And, just with a lot of the racist, sexist, homophobic, events that happened, and some of the candidates responding and just saying, this happens all the time, and just, they have to have a really thick skin. So I don't think every candidate experiences those types of incidents, but, It's tiring. You know, as Michael said, it takes a lot of time away from your family and your friends, and I think with COVID too, it's given a lot of time for people to think about priorities in life, and so that, you know, that COVID effect could certainly have happened in this case too, in terms of making decisions about whether they run or not.
This performance by the Liberals, I'm curious how much you attribute it to the campaign. I mean, there were, and I talked to many business owners who were quite excited about the prospect of not having to pay PST for a year and having that dropped. I mean, that was something that a lot of people wanted, but clearly it wasn't enough. So how much do you put this on the promises that were being made from that party?
Well, yeah, I could see some store owners being happy about it, but almost to a person, economists panned it, and a lot of your colleagues in the media panned it. I mean, the Von Palmers, the Keith Baldrys. I mean, a lot of the main reporters in this province kind of gave it a thumbs down very quickly too. They were very cynical about it. And from an economics point of view, there's a lot of leakages. It's not a very good tax cut to stimulate the economy, actually. So it could have been better in smarter ways. It was, I got a sense, Joe, when they started with that, I thought it was okay. Their strategy is go big or go home. They're going to come out with a big campaign with some big promises to really shift the story of this campaign. But that one just flopped. It was like a one-day news story almost. And that was like their biggest prize out there on the Christmas tree.
The flip side of this is a lot of British Columbians are watching this thinking to themselves, I'm going to get a check in the mail for $1,000 now, right?
Well, that's a little more tangible.
Yeah. But I think,
again, very cynical, but
I think that idea of pocketbook politics and fiscal restraint, again, as mentioned earlier, it just wasn't, I think, as strong as issue as perhaps elections in the past. And I think people were looking for a government or for a political party that had a heart, a big heart, and felt that they would take care of them. And not just say as an individual, but take care of everybody, and especially those that most need it. And I think NDPs perhaps spoke to that the most, and the Greens, and I don't think Liberals quite, you know, had that same type of message in their platform.
And I don't think you can undervalue the stability that everybody needs right now. I mean, our lives are in chaos. Our world, our jobs, our kids, everything that we consider to be normal and safe is in chaos in this pandemic. And I think that more than anything, we crave stability. And so I think that played into it. Do you agree that people wanting something the same? Let's not have upheaval in our government as we are in everything else right now.
Well, you know, we saw a minority government in New Brunswick go into the COVID. They came out a majority. We're going to see a majority here. We're going to see, now Saskatchewan's different. We're seeing a huge poll suggesting a return of a majority government. But yeah, stability. And interesting enough, with 7 cabinet ministers not running, the renewal early on, Joe, is going to be in the cabinet. We're going to see a lot of new faces. And in the short term, there's going to be some fresher look to the NDP than there is to the Liberals.
And when we talk about the Liberals having the reset, right? It's the other way around.
Yeah.
If you're just joining us, we will bring up the island results for you again here. We have received word that we are going to be getting reaction from many of the winners that you see here in the next little while. Our team is out there. Many of the South Island NDP candidates are coming quite close to us. A heritage building. What's the name of the building? Do you know, Stace? At Bay and Douglas, where the NDP candidates are going. Yeah, it's across from the Popeyes supplement store. I can tell you
How
that
do you know
much.
that, Joe?
No, yeah, clearly I'm not going to Popeyes. But it's funny because it was such an unusual choice. Usually they take over big hotels, right?
Yeah.
And it's the Hartley Insurance Building. It is a heritage building.
It's a lovely old building.
It's a lovely old building. Folks that know Victoria well will know it. On the corner of Bay and Douglas, that is where Jasmine Balla is, and where we expect to see Mitzi Dean there, Rob Fleming, Marie Rankin. Many of those Greater Victoria NDP winners will head there tonight.
I know that Mitzi Dean and John Horgan's team are going to be staying out on the West Shore tonight. They're going to be at the constituency office out there on Goldstream. Now, Kim, you wanted to weigh in on something a little bit earlier. What was it that you wanted to talk about?
Well, just following up on your point. So, you know who I think is going to just be, watching this very carefully is the Prime Minister. With all of these incumbent COVID elections and, the incumbent governments winning, and when they had a minority in some cases and then getting a majority. I mean, we've seen, the last week at the federal level, almost playing chicken with the other political parties.
Yeah.
I mean, he's probably just going, okay, how can I?
He's trying, isn't he? He wants it,
now?
yeah. We'll see if there's a confidence vote on Monday, right? That could happen.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, how would we react to a federal election, a snap federal election right now? Oh my goodness.
You just saw Nanaimo, North Cowichan. Again, we still don't have a winner there, and Parksville-Qualicum is the other one. As of last check, we haven't been able to call. There it is. Adam Walker extending that lead over Michelle Stillwell. All signs point to this riding going orange for the first time in a while.
Yeah.
Which would be shocking. I mean, Michelle Stillwell's been the MLA there since 2013. She, of course, had a role as a Minister of Social Development in Christy Clark's government there. Yeah. And we just have had word, we thought it was going to happen. We mentioned it before. It wasn't confirmed, but the Greens have won in Vancouver Sea to Sky. So that is the third seat that the Green Party has won. They have equaled their historic performance from 2017, and they will be over the moon, I'm certain, to have won a seat off of Vancouver
And unlike
Island.
their other two wins, this one they've taken from the Liberals.
Yes.
Adam Olsen took that from the NDP last time, and Cowichan Valley was an NDP riding. So here they can also not only boast about three, but that they've now had success against both major political parties.
This must feel good for Sonia Furstenau and Adam Olsen when you think that Andrew Weaver, was in an NDP campaign video. And here they are. They've not only kept their seats, but they've extended it across the Georgia Strait to the mainland. I mean, that is impressive.
It is, and there was early polling numbers out suggesting that they wouldn't win a single seat in this election. There was some real doubt as to whether Sonia Furstenau would even hang on.
So I think that demonstrates, there's a strong green movement in BC and across Canada, and it doesn't necessarily just relate to a person.
Apologies to cut you off, Kim, but we're going to go up to Parksville-Qualicum. Michelle Stillwell is speaking right now to the small crowd, I believe, that's gathered there. Let's listen in and see if we can hear what Michelle Stillwell has to say.
Say thanks to everyone for all your love and your support. You guys have been fantastic. Getting out and phoning people, and the social media campaign that we've had to run during a pandemic election, an unnecessary election, but here we are tonight. I think we will see, as the results come in, we'll see some shifts. It's still early in the night, like I said. We only have 5,000 approximately votes in so far out of our typical 28,000. So let's maybe have some food, enjoy each other's company, and wait for the results to continue to come in.
That is Michelle Stillwell giving her supporters gathered in Qualicum, Parksville there a bit of a pep talk. That riding, that electoral district has not yet been decided. It is too close to call at this point. And as we've talked about before, it may not be called tonight. We may need to wait until those mail-in ballots are counted 3 weeks from now. And let's go through the process of the mail-in balloting, because it could play a factor here on two ridings, at least on Vancouver Island, where those results aren't in. So it takes them, what is it, a week before they can even begin counting, because they have to 2 weeks.
Elections BC in the briefing the other day said within 2 days after tonight, so say Monday or Tuesday, they will announce the total numbers of all the ballots mailed in. They'll confirm those. They won't break that down by riding still, so that won't be for another couple of days after that. We'll actually know how many are we talking about specifically in the ridings, and then there's that 13-day period, and so we're looking at possibly November after Remembrance Day, so November 12th to 13th, 16th
is the day perhaps,
and then there's the window for judicial recounts. So we could be waiting as long as the campaign took for the resolution on one or two or three of these ridings.
In the big picture, though, and we're looking at the leading and elected count right now. In the big picture, it won't have a difference or make a difference.
No. We can speculate as to, were there slightly more NDP people mailing in or Liberal or that, but the numbers probably. The other story I just want to, if we have a bit, is one of the stories we'll learn later in the campaign, our post-campaign, will be the number of rejected ballots. And I think with the mail-in, it was great how many people participated, but we're going to probably be stunned that there's 15 or 20,000 rejected ballots in the mail-ins because people filled them in incorrectly, particularly when they were blanks. Remember, we had the blank ballots. So that's going to be a story around what if. But that'll be for British Columbians are used to very well-run elections with a very low percentage of rejected ballots. We're going to hear numbers in the tens of thousands, possibly.
You know, we heard some comments heading into tonight from people saying, I'm not even going to watch because we're not going to have a result.
Wow.
You know, how surprised are you, though? Because I do think there's people watching tonight that went into tonight a couple of hours ago saying, well, I'll tune in, but we're not going to know anything. It's going to take some time. That was a huge piece to this campaign, the what would happen tonight. Are you surprised that here we are?
I'm not, just especially given the last week and even what's happening up in Parksville, Qualicum. I was chatting with some of the media folks up there, and they were stating that the momentum just wasn't there for Stillwell this time, that it was turning in favor for the NDPs. And I went, okay, well, that's like a Liberal, yeah, it's a bedrock seat, it seems, on the island. So if she's in trouble, what about others? And then just that, you know, kind of that orange crush momentum building that we've seen a little bit here on the island, but more on the mainland. So there's the polls, but then there's also, you know, so many other variables that you have to take into account. And then, you know, we have something new, this pandemic, that we have to think about. And then Stacey, going back to your point, you know, about stability. And we've seen just people craving that right now.
This is a big one here. It looks like Mary Polak, you know, as it stands right now, will not be re-elected in Langley, and that is a big loss to the Liberals.
And we just saw as well Marvin Hunt, who's a former cabinet minister for the Liberals, has been defeated in his riding. So again, that's a big one there. And there we can see that Jane Thorthwaite is
pretty clear there.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's in big trouble there down in her riding of North Vancouver. Seymour. How much do you think that hurt her, the whole controversy with Bonema and her comments? And I mean, gosh, that really seemed to set the tone in a lot of ways for the Liberal campaign. And do you think that hurt her here?
Absolutely. You know, she might have been in trouble anyways because we're seeing a trend across other Liberal ridings, but that probably sealed her fate and made it definite. We've seen the, you know, you asked earlier, the number of advance, we talked a lot about the mail-in ballots then, but, you know, a larger percentage actually voted in advance polls, you know, about 680,000. Those were counted tonight. You know, the absentee ones aren't, but that's a very small percentage. The mail-in ballots, maybe there's 480,000 or so, but there was closer to 700,000 advance. You know, we made it much easier. So there's those plus whoever showed up today. So in the last election, 90% of the ballots were counted on election night. Tonight, maybe it's 70%, but that's still enough statistically to give us a pretty good feel for making these calls tonight.
Another high-profile candidate here for the Liberals, Jazz Johal. It doesn't look good for him. He's in tough in Richmond, Queensborough, so it looks like the NDP may have stolen that seat.
And that was a tight one going in. Joel only won by 263 votes in 2017, so that was going to be a battle. But again, like I mentioned before, that was one the Liberals were really counting on because they
here's a race.
And these are the ones where those mail-in ballots will matter, right? So there are some close races out there. As it stands on the island, as we continue to look on the Lower Mainland, but on the island, it looks like Parksville Qualicum is the one riding, and Nanaimo North Cowichan, I believe.
That's right.
Those two ridings are the only two. And here is Parksville Qualicum. It looks like Adam Walker. He's staying about 400. Oh, we've just saw a jump there, about 500 vote lead. So, and almost all the polls have been reported.
See how the Greens jumped up too? I mean, they're holding a strong 20%. That's really gonna. That's pulling down Stillwell's base.
Absolutely.
And here, I've been wanting to say this all night. This race was close by a whisker.
Speaking of
too late, too soon.
I'm glad you said it because I wanted to say I'm so glad that you kept your beard for this show. Well, I mean, give the people what they want, right?
Hey, look at that. Anyways, he's starting to open up his lead here at an incumbent, three-term MLA, and I didn't think it would be this tight. So interesting, again, the strength of the Green on the island, Kim, as you've talked about before.
We are going to see some by-elections. though,
Yeah,
here
they
in
sure are.
Victoria. So that's going to be one of the stories that we're going to chase in the coming weeks and months. It looks like, you know, if Adam Walker gets in there, we're going to have one there. So there will be more votes to be had here on the island. All right, we're taking or looking at a live shot here of the podium in Vancouver. What hotel are they at again,
They're at the
Stace?
Pinnacle Hotel Harbourfront.
There you
in
go.
Vancouver.
Cole Harbour, I believe.
Yeah.
John Horgan at some point here will speak. Andrew Wilkinson, they are at the Sheridan Wall Centre just off Burrard Street in downtown Vancouver. So at some point we will hear from Andrew Wilkinson. You have to think that they will plan that accordingly. Likely we'll hear from Andrew Wilkinson first and then John Horgan. And there's Sonia First to know, or there's her podium. And there's her name, folks, on the podium. That is the only sort of party. And it kind of feels weird to use the name party tonight because these don't look like the parties we're used to seeing.
I know, and going into our election coverage tonight, I was really expecting to miss that and miss that energy and going to our reporters who enjoy so much being part of the mayhem and the chaos, and there's, you know, people everywhere and banners and music and sounds and playing, and it definitely is different, and I suppose it's fitting that it's a different election night party, you know, considering it's been a different campaign in almost every way.
Yeah.
Really?
I used to be involved in partisan politics way back when, and I have to say, just election night was so much fun. And I've been through some campaigns that have won and some that have lost, and both are just a time to come together as a team. And there's that really sense of camaraderie and supporting the candidate. And I was watching Michelle Stilwell and just thinking, oh my gosh, what a tough speech she, you know, that must be to give to all of the volunteers.
All right, here we go.
Well, thank you for coming, and I want to start by thanking all of the people of British Columbia for taking a part in this critically important democratic process. It's what we do in Canada, and it's what we do in British Columbia, and it's the right way to do it. This has been a campaign like no other in the midst of a global pandemic. We had to learn new ways of campaigning and new ways of reaching out to the voters of British Columbia. We had to find ways to keep everyone safe, and all of the parties and parties around the world are learning ways to campaign which do not involve crowds, involve a lot more virtual electronic contact with the people of British Columbia. To all our dedicated and passionate volunteers, I want to say a deep thank you. They've done an exemplary job of getting the story out to the voters of British Columbia who have made their decision. On a moment's notice, with a snap election, volunteers turned out, and that's a critical part of our democracy. And we, of course, have to encourage people to continue to do so, even with all of the COVID epidemic obligations, to put safety first. Our volunteers helped us to present a bold idea of where British Columbia might go, a positive vision for this province. And for all their hard work and determination, I want to thank all those volunteers. For the people who put their names forward for all parties as candidates, we have to thank them, because it is critically important for our democracy that people are prepared to engage fully in the democratic process, including standing as candidates. To all of the British Columbians who voted, thank you. It's critical to who we are as a society that people get out and vote, and they have done so, whether it was in an advance poll, whether from a telephone, from a long-term care facility, whether by post, or whether in the full election day today. The function of our democracy depends upon full voter engagement, and that is what British Columbians did. We should all be proud of each other for standing by that core function of our democracy. As the results stand tonight, the NDP are clearly ahead, and it appears they will have the opportunity to form government. But with almost 500,000 mail-in ballots still to be counted, we don't know what the final seat count will be. And we owe it to every voter, no matter how they express their intention, to await the final results. Elections BC has done an exceptional job of keeping us safe and keeping our democracy intact, and we need to all thank them for the good work. We have to wait for these results because everyone's voice needs to be heard. This has been an unprecedented election in terms of the level of mail-in ballots, and all of those voters have the right to have their vote counted and taken into account. There are a lot of hardworking people at Elections BC, and there will be many, many volunteers putting in many hours over the next 3 weeks to make sure that every vote is in fact tabulated, counted, and heard. So on top of all my thanks to our campaign volunteers and the voters, I want to thank everyone who's working to deliver that final result. There will be hundreds upon hundreds of people doing long hours, doing fairly repetitive work to make sure our democracy is safe and that every vote is counted. I'm proud to have presented a bold plan on behalf of the BC Liberal Party to move our party into the future, to offer it to the voters of British Columbia, and we will see what the final count says. Many people in this province support our vision across BC, and I want to thank them for their support of our party and for their commitment to the democratic process and to the ideas that we put forward in this election. We'll have more to say going forward, but for now, we all have a responsibility to be patient, to respect the democratic process, and to wait the final results. Thank you.
Will you stay on as leader, Mr. Wilkinson?
Have you talked with John Horgan yet?
Have you spoken with John Horgan yet?
Well, I think that was the question we all wanted an answer to at the end there, and,
I think so.
And we didn't get it. Any surprises from what you heard there?
A very somber man tonight. You showed it on his face. It almost, some high points. He tried to take the high road in terms of thanking a lot of people, volunteers, all candidates, voters. He gave credit to Elections BC, which is going to play a key role, obviously, over the coming 2 or 3 weeks. But I think a very deflated man. A very short mention, really, about his bold vision, and didn't just passing, almost like he felt he had to say that. It was a speech that was, I think, very, very underwhelming and almost painful to watch. Because it was all in our minds. If these numbers stayed more or less the same, this has been a devastating setback for his leadership and his party. But, he took the right, every vote counts. Let's wait for the other 500,000. I'm not sure it's going to be 500,000. It would be a lot less than that. But, but the question that was asked there as he was leaving the room really is the question of the night.
Absolutely. All right, I understand that our Sky Ryan has spoken with the successful candidate Sheila Malcolmson, the incumbent who has won her seat back in Nanaimo. Sky, let's hear from you and Sheila Malcolmson.
After a very exciting night and expected to be a very tight race, Sheila Malcolmson has been declared the winner in the Nanaimo riding. Your first thoughts? You thought it might take a very long time to hear the results.
I'm very thankful to the voters and to the volunteers that made this possible, but it does feel a little unreal. We thought we might be waiting for weeks, and this happened much faster than I thought.
Not only did it happen much faster, but much faster for your whole party. A majority NDP government now declared. This is what he ventured a gamble on. You were on that train. Must be a relief right now.
Yeah. The work that's ahead of us to continue to fight the pandemic and to recover from it is colossal. Nobody's ever done anything like this before. And I know that the Premier really wanted to know that the people were behind him. So we are just going to be hugely energized by the trust that the voters have put in us. And it's a huge job ahead, but we are all excited to get back to work.
One interesting aside, Sheila, I noticed that both in this riding and the Nanaimo North Cowichan riding, the Greens came in second. This is a new trend that we're seeing. The Greens came in second to you, as well as in the Nanaimo North Cowichan riding. How do you assign that? How do you characterize that?
We haven't really dug into the numbers, but I know in 2017, when we heard from a lot of BC Liberals that were very angry about the Christy Clark leadership, that they turned their vote to the BC Greens. So I love, I come from the environmental movement, so I love to know that people are voting environment first. I'm proud of the work that we've been able to do as an NDP government in the 3 years already. We also have a lot of social justice work to do.
So you're seeing people assigning their vote to maybe a new party that is going more with their beliefs.
Yeah. I didn't hear a lot of it in the campaign, but we could only reach so many people by phone, and so I didn't really talk to a lot of Liberal or Green voters as it turned out. So I'll leave that to the pundits to analyze them,
So now,
where that's coming from.
Will there be physically distant cheers, physically distant champagne pour?
Well, I mean, you remember in January 2019, we had a huge victory party at the conference center. The premier was there, and now there's like 7 of us, and we're all far apart and with our masks on. So everything is different during the pandemic, including a celebration. But I just had a Zoom call with a lot of our volunteers to give them thanks. I phoned the Liberal and Green candidates and thanked them for a good contest. We're still giving thanks just from a distance.
Okay, Sheila, thank you and congratulations. Sheila Malcolmson, now the MLA second term for Nanaimo.
All right, thank you very much, Sky Ryan, speaking with Sheila Malcolmson there, who has won her riding in Nanaimo, and we are just waiting for Sonia Furstenau. She is about to come up to the podium and speak to her supporters, the few that are gathered there at the Delta Ocean Point Resort, and those who are watching. Of course, an historic day once again for the Green Party, winning Sonia Furstenau's seat in the Cowichan Valley. Adam Olsen winning his seat in North Saanich and the Islands, and of course that epic Green victory across the water on the mainland in Vancouver, Sea to Sky. So 3 seats at this point for the Green Party as we wait for Sonia Furstenau to make her appearance.
The only island riding that we don't have a winner for right now is Parksville-Qualicum, but that one should be called shortly. All right, let's go to the Delta Hotel and listen to the leader of the Green Party, Sonia Furstenau.
It's a lot of cameras. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we are on the unceded territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people. And I want to start by saying thank you. First, to our amazing 74 candidates who stepped up to run on a moment's notice, who got out there, did everything they could, gave it everything they got, and got the signatures to get up and running on the ballot in just 11 days. To our incredible campaign staff who have worked tirelessly day and night to run this amazing campaign. Thank you and congratulations to my friend Adam Olsen. Adam is an amazing representative for the people of Saanich North and the Islands, for our province, on so many important issues. Adam, your support and friendship means the world to me, and I'm excited to serve another term with you. Thank you to my local campaign staff and team for working so hard in the Cowichan Valley to connect with voters in this election. You kept me grounded, and I'm grateful for everything you have done. And thank you to all the volunteers and donors who supported our campaigns. Your dedication and passion for what we stand for is inspiring. And thank you for all who work and volunteer for Elections BC. And for everyone who voted with hope and cast a vote for our party, I take your trust and faith in me and our party very seriously, and I promise to serve you dutifully every day in the legislature. And finally, to my family, my husband Blaze, my children, my mother, I am very, very grateful for the support. And my son Nicholas, who is with me through this campaign. We have worked hard every day to put forth a hopeful vision for how we can address British Columbians' needs during the remainder of this pandemic, and to make sure that every person has their basic needs met, and that our businesses can stay whole and quickly get back on their feet when we get to the other side. And to start putting in place the building blocks for a clean economic recovery so we can have a stronger, more sustainable province. The NDP engineered this election to get a majority and wipe out their opponents. They were half successful. What these results are showing is that British Columbians are not willing to give the government a pass on things like climate change or old growth protection and the holes in the COVID recovery plan. While they may have their majority, British Columbians have returned Green MLAs to hold government accountable. And there are still many votes to be counted, but we are seeing incredible successes where we haven't before. West Vancouver Sea to Sky elected a Green, and Nelson Creston is on the brink. And even outside of these ridings, we are doing better than anyone expected. Thank you for trusting us with your vote. We know you're looking for us to put this election behind us and get to work on the issues that matter, and we will not let you down. This election ends just as we started to enter the second wave of COVID-19, and I understand how stressful this is for everybody. We've already sacrificed a lot, and this is going to be a difficult winter. Whether it's on the back-to-school plan, the supports for small businesses and tourism operators, or long-term care homes, we know there is a lot more that you are expecting from government. And we will do everything we can to hold them accountable for these changes and to be the voice for you in the next legislature. The NDP have shown that while they will say the right thing, they won't act on it unless they are forced to. We worked hard in the last minority government to improve their policies and to stand up for the issues that matter to people's well-being. We've shown that partisanship is less important than advancing policy that makes a difference in the lives of British Columbians. This is the same approach that will inform our work in the next government. In the last days of the campaign, John Horgan opened the door to wanting to work with other parties. As with everything the NDP do, actions will speak louder than words. While the recovery from COVID-19 must be our first priority, we must ensure that the actions we take to help our province out of this pandemic set us up for success in the future. We need to ensure that investments we make today address the health and economic impacts of COVID, allow us to build a stronger, more sustainable, and more resilient economy. And while COVID is the most pressing crisis we face, it is not the only one. For many, the cost of living in BC is far outstripping the ability of people to cover their necessities, let alone save for the future. Not enough has been done to address the growing number of people who are being left out of prosperity in this province. Some fear that the massive disruption caused by COVID will pale in significance compared with the disruption caused by the changing climate. Our communities face growing threats, and our government is not moving fast enough to adapt and reduce our emissions. In all of this is an opportunity. By making deliberate, strategic choices in how we navigate COVID-19, we can seize new opportunities from these challenges. We can build an economy that is more inclusive, that has secure jobs for British Columbians across the province. We can establish BC as a world-leading low-carbon economy, exporting the ideas and the technology that the world needs to solve the climate crisis. I promise we will work every day to advance this agenda and hold the NDP accountable for the promises that they have made. Thank you.
We will now go to questions from the floor, from the mic over to Sonia's left. And the first question is Rob Buffum from CTV.
Well, there you have it. Green Party leader Sonia Furst now, just 8 days as leader, has managed to pull her party together and make some historic strides here in the province, with more counting still to be done. For now, though, let's head back out to Jasmine Ballas. She is standing by with Rob Fleming, who has been successful in Victoria Swan Lake once again. He first won his seat in 2005, and he will carry on. Jasmine, let's hear from you and Rob Fleming.
That's right, Stacey. So he actually won. You're at 56% of the vote right now. That's, you know, not all the polls are counted, but that's at 500 votes, or 5,000 votes, sorry, excuse me, so far. So how are you feeling about that?
Well, I'm feeling really good. I just want to thank my constituents for placing trust in me to work in a what appears to be a John Horgan re-elected government. We're going to wait and see how the rest of the night goes and count every ballot before we declare that. But no, it feels very positive, and I think that the trust that British Columbians have placed in us throughout the province is really to get through the COVID pandemic safely, and to start talking about building a strong economic recovery in BC. And we wanted to make the South Island a real part of that. We talked about jobs, we talked about promising green industries like the film and TV industry and partnerships with Comoson and the Film Commission, as well as expanding jobs in the shipyard and ship repair industry. I felt really good about my team of candidates here on the South Island and the kinds of substance we put into the campaign, just giving people hope and also working with the business community, working with labor, to make sure that the South Island has the infrastructure investments that are going to be part of building back better.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about your experience kind of following along with the results tonight. Obviously, it's a bit of a different election night than usual. So how was that?
Yeah, I mean, we're wearing masks, and my family's in a small room with just their immediate family, and it was a different campaign, but I felt that using both traditional campaign techniques, getting printed material to people, as well as, the trend anyway to more digital media campaigning techniques was part of that. Probably the oddest thing for me personally was this is the first election over 4 election cycles where I haven't campaigned with my good friend Carol James, who of course represents the other Victoria riding, and she has done an incredible job and had just an amazing career and done such a great job as the finance minister. So, if I had to pay tribute to any one of my colleagues in particular tonight, it would be Carol James, who's probably watching at home with her husband Al tonight.
Yeah. Last question is just, you've had a pretty big day today, so what are the rest of your plans for tonight?
Well, I think we'll take stock of what the verdict is from British Columbians. I am sure we will be talking as.
All right, this is the moment many people were waiting for. Here is, the next Premier of British Columbia, John Horgan, going to say a few words in downtown Vancouver.
Good evening, everyone. I want to acknowledge that I'm on the unceded traditional territory of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. BC has voted, and a majority has been called, but there are many, many hundreds of thousands of votes yet to be counted. And while we wait for that final count to happen, I want to assure people that I'm going to keep the focus right where it belongs, on helping people get through this pandemic, making sure that they have the services that they need, and all British Columbians can sleep safely, knowing that we're going to do everything we can to keep them safe, healthy, and secure. One thing we know for certain is that on Monday I'll be going back to work, and we're going to be putting people, businesses, and others who are focused on getting through the pandemic at the front of everything that we do. That has been our commitment and will continue to be our commitment now and going forward for the next 4 years. To the incredible volunteers that are here tonight and have worked so tirelessly to help us connect with British Columbians, I want to thank you very, very much. To the amazing team of BC NDP candidates in every corner of BC, and to all those people who put their names forward to offer to serve in their communities, I offer you my sincere gratitude and thanks for stepping up to help your neighbours get their lives better and make sure that everyone can benefit from the bounty of British Columbia. This has been an extraordinarily difficult election for many, many reasons, but it's one that I believe had to happen, and I think I'm grateful for all British Columbians that we have put the election behind us and we can get back to focusing on the things that matter most to you. We found new ways to connect with each other. We found new ways to engage and talk about ideas. I want to thank Dr. Henry and Elections BC for doing such an extraordinary job to make sure that all of us could vote safely. To Andrew Wilkinson and Sonia Firstino, I want to thank you for a spirited campaign where you put forward ideas and allowed British Columbians to make clear choices. To the great people of Langford, Wanda Fuca, to my family and my friends for always having my back, thank you, thank you, thank you. Particularly to Ellie, to Nate and Evan. I know you didn't ask for any of this, and all I want to say is thank you so much for enduring my excesses and my passion and desire to be out around people, making sure that British Columbia can be as good as it possibly can be. It has been an honour and a privilege for the past 3.5 years to serve British Columbians, to make sure we can make life better for everyone. I want to make sure that government works for you each and every day. That is my passion, that is my calling, that's why I get up every morning, and I'm grateful for the returns of ballots tonight and the final count that's yet to come, to give the opportunity to me and my colleagues to continue that work on your behalf. COVID-19 has turned our lives upside down. None of us expected to be here. None of us expected that we would have to endure the challenges we've had over the past number of months. But we are far from out of the woods. COVID-19 will be with us for the foreseeable future, and we need to focus on making sure that we're keeping ourselves safe, our families safe, and our communities safe. The challenges ahead are daunting, but I believe that if we focus on the things that matter to British Columbians, the things that matter to people, we'll get through this. Focusing on building back our education system by investing in schools and the people that work in them, by making sure our seniors care facilities have the staff that they need so that our seniors can be cared for in their latter years, that we're building childcare all across British Columbia so that families can fully participate in the economy to make their lives stronger and to make their communities stronger as well. For me, this comes down to a few simple things. I was raised by a single mom who told me to do my best every day, my level best. I say that a lot. She said it a lot to me. All you have to do, John, is your level best. I commit to all British Columbians that for the next 4 years, I will do my level best to make sure your lives are better, more affordable, and the challenges that you face can be overcome if we do it together. Thank you so very, very much to the many, many people who voted for NDP candidates this evening, and as I said, to all of those who participated, a debt of gratitude from all of us for stepping up in this extraordinary time. Thanks so much. Let's get back to work.
Well, there you go, the Premier-elect, John Horgan, who is the first NDP Premier to successfully defend his seat in this province's history, and he's done it resoundingly. At this point, 55 NDP seats, either won already or the NDP is leading. And let's take one final look up and down the island at our Vancouver Island results. Here in the North Island, we're starting with Michelle Babcock, who successfully won that open seat vacated by longtime candidate Claire Trevena.
As we work our way down the island, here's Courtney-Comox here. Let's get some final thoughts from the two of you. Michael, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on the night we just witnessed?
Sure. Well, you know, the phrase historic, it gets overused a lot, but tonight was obviously because of the pandemic, and all three leaders touched on that. You know, not surprisingly, John Horgan, the way he started this campaign, you know, let's get back to work. Let's get this election behind us. He's got to be relieved. The polls got it more or less right tonight. The initial counts and results tonight confirm that.
We'll just stop right here while we look at Parksville-Qualicum. Stacey, this is the only riding that still hasn't been called. And
it may not be called tonight. We have 12 polls yet to report here, and you can see that there are just about 700 votes separating the NDP's Adam Walker from incumbent Liberal Michelle Stilwell. And again, we're talking about mail-in ballots, and if we have to wait for those, we're going to be waiting to the middle of November. But at this point, Adam Walker of the NDP does have the lead there in Parksville-Qualicum.
And we'll move to Nanaimo, and Kim will ask you, what stands out tonight?
Well, one thing, we don't have a minority government, so we're not going to have another snap election. So folks, we're not having an election for another 4 years. I think a lot of promises were made, and none of the platforms were costed out. So I think it is going to be very interesting just to see how the NDP keeps all of their many promises that they made. And I think, you know what? Many people really didn't know who Sonia First to Know was, and I think British Columbians know who she is now and what the Green Party stands for.
I think you could argue that the Green Party, I mean, decades from now, they may look back on this election, and this was the moment that their party was saved. I mean, if this went the other way for them, if they were wiped off the board, could have been it. So this was a critical moment in the story of the BC Greens.
Well, you know, it was a huge gamble for John Horgan because no one has accomplished what he has done tonight by former NDP leaders. So it could have gone disastrously, and true to history. You're right. The Greens, people thought were going to get wiped out because of this snap election. But what we're seeing is the great old Liberal Party machine is the one that's really got the big question mark over it tonight, and who would have thought that 30-odd days earlier than this?
Yes, as you say, the Green Party could look back in history and say that this was a pivotal year. I think the Liberal Party could do the same. This was the year that the Liberals changed everything after this horrific defeat that they've suffered tonight.
We should also note, I'm looking at a note here from the Prime Minister that was sent to John Horgan and the NDP, congratulating them on the win tonight. So Ottawa is watching what is going on, and they're probably watching pretty closely, actually.
Yeah.
All right, so if we look at our breakdown on Vancouver Island so far, we've got 2 Green Party at this point. We've got 1 still undecided. It's neck and neck between the Liberals and the NDP. And let's see, I lost count on my fingers. Does that leave us with, let's see, 2, 3, 11 NDP seats on Vancouver Island of the 14 today. And again, we still have 1 more that we're waiting for. Michelle Stilwell, the longtime incumbent, looking like she's in jeopardy here. As we look at the seats, this is as it stands right now, so either leading or elected, and we're looking at 55 of those orange seats for the NDP, 29 for the Liberals, and right now 3 for the Green Party.
Looks a little different than 3 hours ago when we started this thing, doesn't it?
And just the psychology of this, of where NDP will be looking across at colleagues rather than their opponents. I mean, this really shows what a majority looks like and feels like in the legislature when you've literally pushed the other parties further into a corner.
Well, folks, if you're tired of hearing about an election, I've got bad news. We'll probably be talking about it for a few more weeks as we wait for those mail-in ballots to get counted. Then, of course, there's by-elections to be had. We need to find out who will form cabinet, and so there's a lot to figure out, not to mention the leadership of the Liberals. That's on the line. But for now, I think we're going to call it there and say thank you for watching, and thank you to both of you for being here.
And thank you as well to all our crew in the field and those who've worked so hard, whether it's graphics in the control room or any of the support staff that have been with us tonight. It really does take a village to put on an election show, so we're so grateful to all our colleagues as well. And thank you for joining us tonight for our election coverage. We will keep you posted in the days and weeks ahead.
And you can keep up to speed on that Qualicum, or Parksville Qualicum riding. CHEKnews.ca will have it there. We'll have it on Twitter and social media as well. So as soon as we know what the outcome is there, we'll put it out to as many people as possible.
All right, we'll let you know. For Joe Perkins, I'm Stacey Ross. Thanks so much for being with us. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you soon.
Good night.
Sheep have the most natural temperature regulation